Well, it's not
actually
really, it's not exclusive.
in various
It's
scientific
exclusive to our brain.
exclusive to this particular point in listening history. Wow, incredible stuff. So again, just there's a lot of gravitas to Ethiopia, to Addis Ababa. Not just as a scientist, but as a human. And I think that's what's coming right off the page here.
We've gone from crafting stone tools, in the Rift Valley, in a few million years, to the moon. Right, and now we have the Voyager spacecraft leaving our solar system in just a few million years, and that's the magic of. Imagine the magic of humanity, but it's starting to go back to it starting there.
Basically, what we're saying is that Sean needs to take a lot of textbooks with him if he goes.
Well, this is what I was going to say. Look, yeah, I'm not going to Drama Brain. I'm going on holiday. If anything, it might shrink a little bit.
That's not the point of it. What's the point of this program? It's education. It's weedy in this.
Oh, the education. I told me you was
무채요, 이거.
That's
무채요.
number one and number two.
Trying to raise a titter.
There will be a test at the end of the
Not again.
It's the last radio force, the last bastion of Rivian Valleys on the planet.
Oh, the horror if that's true. People looking at a picture of me.
Well, I got this COVID, and it's going to then a great
呢個唔該瞓嗰個，即係啱眼瞓而家。你而家眼唔眼瞓？
Non-intellectual sort of basic experience. Spending 2 hours around a hotel bar and food. Coming back, you ask me how it was, and you say you get to the museum. And that makes me look nice. That's what I've been most concerned about. I think I'm probably going to just watch Human Universe on the iPlayer on the airplane on the way to the room instead. No, it's so much better. I can't there's so long. That's so much the thing about that what beautiful is it? And it's eloquent and it's correct. So what other how many cities can you do that? But you know what, thank you so much for your time. It was a really lovely thing to hear about. That's it for this show. Thank you to our unbelievable guest. Brian Cox. My trusty voice of reason, Izzy Lawrence, and producers Beth O'D and Caitlin Hobbs. I've been Sean Keaveney, and this is the BBC audio production for BBC Radio 4. And if you want more African inspiration, you can listen to the brilliant research of London and tours to Malawi. If you enjoyed this episode, I'm not telling you very much. You and then subscribe to Your Place or Mine on BBC Sound. See you next time. Bye.
A destination closer to home next on Radio 4 after Gloucester's recent annual cheese rolling event. The kitchen cabinet is rolling into town. Just now, we're looking ahead to tonight's archive.
I've always shied away from calling myself comedian. I prefer to think of myself as a phenomenon.
I'm Max Kinney, and I had the great privilege of writing the Brit Mail for over a decade.
Always loved it. The house, different characters, different accents. You just need that to enjoy yourself.
During that collaboration, we recorded over 100 hours of conversation, and now, for the first time ever, you can hear some of the never-before-heard highlights.
The Dark Ages actually weren't very dark. They were just badly dead.
Brit Mail and Global Phenomenon. Tonight at 8 on BBC Sounds and Radio 4.
Now on Radio 4, here's Jay Rayner.
Hello and welcome to the Kitchen Cabinet. This week we're in Gloucester in the southwest of England, a historic cathedral city dating back to Roman times. Gloucester's food heritage is just as weighty as food items appear throughout the city's cultural legacy. There's the Gloucester hotspot, a bit of a cultured Roman heritage green. You may have heard of this area's famous cheese. At the moment, even the local rugby club is nicknamed the Elva Eaters, a reference to the young eels that historically have populated the Roman Severn. Rejoicing in Gloucester's many food offerings, the writers of food lovers Robbo and Brown, the Rato Crusader, and Angela Graham. With a bit of a cult in our world, it's our materials expert Dr. Terry Laughlin. Ladies and gentlemen, your Kitchen Cabinet panel. When it comes to Gloucester, the first offering you might think of is its well-known cheese. Single Gloucester is less well-known. Its fatter double Gloucester usually takes the headlines, not least because it's the cheese that raises nearby Hill every May. Panel, we're here in Gloucester just days after the cheese roll. So I want to know, what food or food fad would you gladly chuck down a hill? There is nothing tenuous in the links that we do in this show. There's a robustness steel, Zoe Laughlin.
I'm going to go with icing, because I think it is out of control. It began with cupcakes, didn't it? You get almost like 50% of it was icing. It's become a sort of grouting to then put in whole sort of bars of chocolate or entire biscuits get planted in icing.
I don't think I've ever seen you so angry.
I'm pushing it down the hill.
Okay, that's going down the hill. Angela Gray, what goes down your hill?
Oh my goodness, there are many things, but top of my list has to be smashed avocado.
Oh, hang on.
I know.
Losing the audience.
I know. Oh my god. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love avocado. I mean, I've been known to well up sitting with one that's perfectly ripe with a little salt and just love it. The smashed avocado is like nothing.
It was very early in the show. Lorato, what do you hate?
I must be the only person I've ever met who hates pasta or spaghetti of all kinds, especially of the worm-like kind. So as a preteen in boarding school in Nigeria, I was force-fed by a nun spaghetti, broken up into smithereens and cooked in this slosh of what would usually be really nice jollof.
Disappear again. And you're thinking, what does he do? What is he doing now?
He's drug dealer.
Drug dealer?
Yeah.
Really?
They mentioned drugs.
Wake up, I'll check my phone, start responding to people. I would decide what friend I'm going to use that day, and when I mean use, take advantage of them. I'd have my regulars. So the ones I really trusted, it'll be a house delivery. I might go and smoke again. Nighttime will be, the last round. I would go gamble, get angry, get into a fight, come home, sober up, have a cold shower, get my stuff ready for the next day, and then repeat.
If
She slip away to the side of that staircase, then my money won't see. You put up that curtain or knock on this shelf. Whoever's keeping an eye out will let you in. Loopholes and assuming walkways. Carpet shop doubling up as a front. Will be a place to duck into, you know.
It was embarrassing, I think, seeing that there were so many businesses dealing with it all, mainly off licenses, dry cleaners, restaurants, kebab shops, market stores. And it's all connected. There's a big team, one after the other. When you go down certain streets, you know that that person knows that person, and that's how they like it. If you really knew how big that scale was and how far that branches out, it's way bigger than what everyone thinks.
It's hard to be a woman in this community because you're living in a mindset that's based on like normal and being pure and honourable. While I mean the cognitive dissonance of seeing a lot of impure and dishonourable activity, your home becomes a safe space to invite people into so that they can talk without anyone seeing and noticing. Or the girl that's serving somebody in a couch where people are talking about what their next move will be. You're always turning a blind eye until you're asked to look.
Doors were open, so you felt like you could walk in and play there with Paul. The house was like always smoky and lots of nice looking waitresses around. And you're there with your other friends that are also 13, 14, maybe 15. And then they'd shut the door and then you could come and think, oh well, they're just having their tea or their coffee or, you know, they're gambling or playing cards. You get to the back of the room and you're like, why is there a big hole in that wall? You smell it. What the hell? Where is it coming from? But then you're drawn into like you can smoke in here, drink in here, but you do that as a teenager. There was exchange of hands always. Between service touches, you wanted it. And you drink that and have some cigarettes. No. And then you realise there's a whole load of dodgy going on. It's just picking up the vibes of people mumbling around you and thinking to get out of here.
There are lace curtains above businesses on West Green Road. There are lace curtains above businesses on Green Lanes. All the lace blowing. There are signs.
I mean, if you're looking down Green Lanes, left and right on the high street, every 2 to 3 houses would be a brothel. I worked there in the early 2000s. It would be a 12-hour shift, and my job role was literally just to sit and answer the phone. Hello, Peaches, how can I help? You'd even sort of play into it yourself and be like, hi baby, oh long time no see, when are you coming back to see us? Just kind of feeding into their ego and making them feel like, you know, the big man, the daddy. And then they'd say, what girls do you play for? Well, it's 7 for 3 girls. We have an Eastern European 20-year-old who's size 8 and is double D. She has A-levels, which is obviously code for a sex act. And then, yeah, I'll give them the address and they'll come over and then they'll have a look at the girls and choose which one they want. Okay, darling, just come along and I'll see you soon. I felt horrible working there, really. At this point, I hadn't had children myself, but I don't think it takes a mother to feel the type of way seeing young girls in winter, wrapped up in a dressing gown, high off their faces, just to get themselves from one client to the next. A lot of these kids are also threatening family members, and they have, you know, addresses and photographs where their family live in, say, Bulgaria or Romania, for example. So even if you did want to help, you can't. When I started noticing my dad's face changing, like the corners, and
that made me feel out of control. When did you last ask your dad to I didn't know I was asking him to compare it. I was at my dad and he locked himself in his bedroom. And my grandmother sitting on the floor, smoking Dunhill cigarettes, crying. I said, why are you crying? And she's like, because your dad's in the room smoking cigarettes. What she meant, she knew her son was injecting himself with heroin, but she didn't tell me that. So I said, why is she crying about him smoking cigarettes? And she's sitting in the paradise. It made no sense. So I'd be there and be like, knocking on the door, and my dad's ignoring me, knocking on the door.
Oh.
Stop responding to people. Driving around with the hoodie. Nice place. Meeting me up. Not my friends, like again. I've always made sure I see one of my things were I have the nasty habit of being attached to and breaking straight. I don't know why I enjoy that. During the day, regret and really disgusting or something, but at least every hour, like, what a piece of shit. That would force me more to come home, sober up, apologize, and stuff like that the next day, and then repeat.
It's closer in a way where we're navigating the same spaces. It would be a lot closer in a sense. helping. It hurts, I think, for a long time. You try to get over it, but that will never go. It's not fair, because you actually come from such a beautiful life, and you understand that it came to you and all the other women as well. So I didn't want to have any type of chance. I didn't actually want to be a part of the Turkish community. I thought the closer I got into the Turkish community, the more I had to worry about what I said, how I behaved, what I done.
Wake up. I'll check
Wake
my
up.
phone.
Oh, wake up.
Start responding to people. I wasn't healthy. My friends were like moving on. Felt lonely. I used to interview myself. I was so repetitive. When was the last time I did something for the first time? Felt like balance. Then I started the recovery process of cleaning my system, trying to get my brain right. So it was painful. I had to move areas. I didn't want to see certain people outside because now I'm working now. It's nice, I'm normal now, I love it. I can speak to you about what I'll do in the next 5, 10 years. I can answer questions like that now. I think that's beautiful.
Some man is still walking on a live wire. Synthetic drugs now. Another face, another name. Tottenham boys caught up. Circus returning to your town. Silences reignited. The first prison was Pentonville. We'd arrive super early and we'd be sitting in the canteen, really anxious, excited, butterflies, we're going to see our dad, we're going to see him. When they call you and say, it's your turn to come in, you hear the gate slam behind you. You go for another security door slam. And then you see your dad and it all changes. You feel like, oh my God, that was all worth it. And then all of a sudden he just didn't get as big and tall. We were sitting there with him, waiting for him to bust some joke and be like loving, and it just wasn't. So I remember when I went home that day, I locked myself in the bathroom and I thought, well, this is
Looking back on that time, the conversation we've had so far, were you a collaborator? Do you think that's a better word than you? I feel like I was a collaborator with Mr. Avalon. You made me feel like that. You made the whole team feel like they were collaborators, which is the wonderful thing about working in fashion is that sometimes when the team works together, you have this great sense of, cooperation and that you're making something beautiful together. So that was one side, and then with Damien, it wasn't quite so much that way. He wanted to see things his own way. He wanted the right just so, he wanted his truth just so, and I found that quite suffocating. Which you could characterize as, because you're an artist and you're a writer, but I'm here. Artistic differences. Yeah, we do. We had artistic differences. I wanted to feel a bit more free in the way that I worked with him, and he just didn't want that. What was it do you think you gained as a muse to David Bowie? Was it just look? Oh, I think that we had a connection, and when you have a connection with a photographer or a singer, some artist, that must change your about someone rather than if it's just a model who comes in and can you describe that connection? What is it? It's quite sort of otherworld. It's like you're in another dimension, a sudden world person. There's a kind of sense of freedom and creativity, and if you're dancing with the dog or whoever it is, I always found that exciting and very hard to describe, because it isn't at that moment based on sex, it isn't based on romance, it's something else, it's a creative act. But it did end that period of you being muse. I'm wondering what manifested this really quite extreme acne attack, which sort of disfigured my face for a while, and it certainly ended my career. And then it ended my relationship with Bailey, sort of about a year later.
How difficult that must be for you, because you were a woman that was known for your looks, right? We've talked about Richard Avedon, we can talk about Truman Capote as well. I mean, what a life you have lived. But your skin was the thing that changed, and changed everything in its wake.
That's true. And, there's a great quote, celebrity is the mask that eats into the face. And in my case, it was literal, But I think that sometimes you have to listen to your body, and your body is telling you things that you're unconscious of. And in my case, that was certainly true. And I think it was because I had to kind of wake up. I had to wake up and actually make my own way through life, not dependent on a male, not dependent on my appearance and looks. And that was a long process, but I think talking about this time about did you feel you were passive? I do, yes, I have to say, I do feel like I was passive.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, I think that I was very much in control of men at the time, and that's the way I was brought up in many ways, and I think that's my generation. Perhaps a lot of women felt that way. Women weren't as educated as they are now, generally speaking. You weren't necessarily imbued with ambition to become sort of CEO of the company or whatever it is. So you're more dependent on men unless you have a real sort of inner spark to do something on your own.
Oh, sorry, Alana, go ahead.
I wondered if you feel as though you gained anything from those experiences that you used to do with photographers. Did they help your career in any way?
Well, yeah, I got a book out of it, haven't I? So eventually, yes, but I've also feel that I got so much out of the relationships with Bailey and with Richard Avedon and other photographers too, because there is a kind of connection between models and photographers sometimes that happens quite magically in that moment, and I found that always to be quite inspiring.
Let's talk about you being a teenager, because you caused a sensation of those black and white for you just 16.
Don't know how much there is to tell you, except that I was 16. I'd known Truman Capote since I was 13. He was very kind to me once when I asked him about writing, and I was very surprised to get an invitation, and it was an incredible spectacle that he put on. It was extraordinary. People coming from all over, Europe and Hollywood and New York, intellectuals all mixing together, which kind of hadn't happened before, and people had spent months getting themselves together and their costumes and everything. And there were no other people my age, so it was a sort of adults party. There was people like Norman Mailer, who had a fight with George Bundy, who was the national security advisor to the U.S. at the time.
Oh,
that was really, it was thrilling.
How did you have Truman Capote's address?
Oh, sorry, I met him through my parents. He came to lunch at my parents' house.
So your parents were quite well connected?
Yes, they were. It was a party for Dave Buey, who was one of the swans.
They are one of the How do you describe them?
He was never around Truman Capote. The muses, the muses, of Truman Capote, yeah.
Penelope Tree's book is A Piece of My Heart, and it's out now, and you can hear the full programme, all about muses, on BBC Sounds. Look for programme dated the 27th of May. Now, earlier this week, Lula was joined by the Grammy Award-winning, Tony Award-winning, BBC Radio 2 Cook Award-winning songwriter Anais Nicole. She's been releasing music since 2002, but more recently, you might know her as being the creator of Hadestown, a genre-defined musical retelling of the Orpheus and Eurydice myth, blending folk music and New Orleans jazz. Currently playing on Broadway and in London's West and theirs began with a performance from the musical Make Sound. This is Why We Build the World.
Well done, come on over, and there's Mitchell has a guitar with her as well. So I went last night, and that was Hades, who is king of the underworld, who sang it. And some people have talked about that song and whether, of course, we always heard about it when it came to Donald Trump's presidential campaign in 2016. But you had this song before that.
Yeah, this is kind of one of the first songs I wrote for the show back in 2006. And yeah, it was wild because 10 years later we were heading for our off-Broadway production of Hades Sound, and it just coincided with the campaign and then the winning of the election by Trump, and I never expected to hear that kind of language coming out of, our leader's mouth.
Yeah, and perhaps also because Donald Trump is a great communicator, because also sometimes when I speak to people who's very much supportive, he is a bit of a critic.
Right, he was tapping into something, I guess.
Yeah.
Something resonating for
When you started working on Hades Sound almost 22 years ago, I was asking some of my listeners for stuff that they persevered with, and they're coming in droves. But where did the idea first come from?
It was kind of one of those mystical things, when you're writing a song and like something drops out of the sky. I got some lines that seemed to be about this myth. I think it was how to try to tell a longer form story with songs. I also was like, in my early
20s, I was right out of school. I was kind of like a idealist and a dreamer and an artist and coming up against the real world, you know. And there's something inherent, I think, in the Orpheus story. It's a coming of age story, like this young man who hopes that he can make something beautiful enough that he can change the rules of the world. And take it on the underworld, like what, it's obviously based on mythology, it's really cool to stumble in lovers, and then there's this kind of ruined marriage between the gods, Hades and Persephone, the queen of industry and the queen of nature. And so Hades' town represents sort of a place of relative wealth and security. And Eurydice, rather than being bitten by a snake and dying, which is what happens in the original myth, she makes a conscious choice to go to this place of security, and she leaves her lover behind.
And I'm not going to give away the ending of your particular musical, but do you feel there's a message or a morality tale in it?
If there's anything like a moral, I think it's Orpheus, he's not to give it away, but he's a hero to us all, but not because he succeeds in the end. It's really the fact that he tries to do an impossible thing, to change the world, and I think if there's a moral to Hades' Town, it has something to do with the continuing to try. Because he's still a hero, but he sort of gets the feeling that, like, someone else is going to try next. Like, there's a baton pass that's going on.
And back to you then, did you ever think I mean, on film last night, these are adoring fans. I'd love to know what would happen if you just walked through that theatre.
I don't know that I'd be recognized, you know? I mean, it's a wild thing. I've lived with it for so long, and I worked on it for, 13 years of my life, and I know how much effort went into it, and it's also not mine at all. You know, when I go and I see fans of the show and people that are dressed up as the characters, I'm like, I have no idea what this show means to those people.
Your style to me, I just met you a few minutes ago in the bathroom, if I'm being completely transparent. But your style, looking at you, reminds me of a mythical creature.
I love that.
It's very much in line with what I felt I saw on stage last night. I think you could blend right in there.
Oh, thank you. that means something.
There were a lot of women involved in developing this town. Talk me through a little of what that process was like.
Yeah. Well, so the main important collaborator in the phase where I was working in New York and doing workshops and sort of readying a piece for off-Broadway and then for Broadway and then for West End, is of course Richard Chavkin, the director. And yeah, I didn't set out to find a female director. I was in Ars Nova, this tiny theater in New York, and I saw a Dave Malloy piece called The Great Comet of 1812, and was just so blown away by the visual storytelling in that show. And I said, whoever this director is, this is what I want.
This is the person.
And it turned out it was Rachel. And we also had our two lead producers, Mara Isaacs and Gail Franzen, are women who had never taken a show to Broadway. So there was a lot of kind of just all of us putting our faith in each other.
But it is still such a male-dominated room.
It is. Yeah, it remains that way, especially here at the theater. But it's been a lot of time, and I have to mention the Carol, who has been used for my stuff, who wrote and stars in. It's just changing all the time.
Also, how about the female character? How would you describe it?
Certainly, like, we made an effort to give women more agency than they would have had in the classical myths. Eurydice in the original myth, kind of all you really know about her is that she's beautiful, and Orpheus is madly in love with her, and then she dies, And of course, every time in this telling of the tale, she makes a conscious decision to go to Hades' Town. And Persephone is also, kind of a victim in the original mythology. She is abducted by Hades. And in this telling,
there's more focus on her as this queenie that is sort of in equal stature to Hades. And she also is kind of a ruined character. Like the idea is that the trouble in their marriage is creating the troubles in the world. And Hades is sort of the engine of the problem. He's this compulsive industrialist and he's the engine of the problem, but she's not blameless. She's sort of a flawed character, and she kind of numbs herself with fruit of the vine.
Fruit of the vine, alcohol, aka.
Yeah. It was helpful for her to be flogged, basically. It made him.
We need to see what will be the reaction of the private versus our political partners in Canada. And I think that these political partners will be definitely against it. So, yeah, this is a point where Netanyahu has to decide whether he wants to be thrown away from Iran's history or whether he wants to make a necessary change in his attitude that will end the war and will open up for an entirely different process. First thing is
what about this assertion from President Biden that Hamas's capabilities have been degraded now to the point that they can't carry out an attack like October the 7th? Should that be enough for President Netanyahu and indeed his coalition partners to say, okay, we've got to think now where we want to continue here?
Hamas today has carry out a similar thing against the state of Israel. And even there's a point in the future
Scoring a peace deal and recovering hostages and the ultimate security for the state of Israel.
You mentioned a Palestinian state. How close do you think we are now to the prospect of a Palestinian state?
Oh, I think we're still some distance away. There's much to be done between Palestinian factions themselves to resolve the situation, as well as finding a practical way forward with the agreement of other states, let alone trying to define what the state might be and where it, where geographical terms it will actually cover. So we are some distance away from that, but we are closer to a recognition of a Palestinian state, particularly by those states who want to see a two-state resolution. As Palestinian representatives make clear, if you're in favour of a two-state resolution, you've got to be in favour of both states, and that requires recognition for Palestine. But recognition is still some way from seeing a Palestinian state which can only come with a resolution of the conflict and also West Bank and East Jerusalem issues as well. That is what the region is certainly looking for.
Alistair Burt, many thanks. Alistair Burt, former Minister of State for the Middle East. Well, another day, another huge hack. The parent company of Ticketmaster has confirmed that the ticketing site has been the subject of a cyber attack. Live Nation told the US Securities and Exchange Commission that hackers had offered to sell their customer data on the dark web earlier this week. The scale of it isn't yet known, but a group of hackers calling themselves Shiny Hunters said they'd stolen personal details of 560 million Ticketmaster users. They claimed responsibility for a hack on Santander, which the banking group confirmed yesterday had involved the information of 30 million staff and customers. Rob Martin is the former chief executive of the National Cyber Security Centre, now professor at the Levack School of Government. Good evening. On this hack, there is some suggestion that it could be linked to an attack on a cloud storage service provider. So one company serving many others, and therefore many other companies could subsequently come to be affected. I mean, is that a real vulnerability for companies these days relying on services like this?
Well, I think we need to know a lot more before we jump to the conclusion about cloud, because individual targeted attacks at single companies are the greatest source of data breaches, and indeed Ticketmaster has a pretty unhappy history in this respect. The third major data breach or cyber disruption it's experienced in the last 6 to 7 years. So this Shiny Hunters group that you mentioned have been on a bit of a data theft rampage. It's possible that that's done through central cloud infrastructure, but a lot of cloud infrastructure is better security records, so unless you have direct fraud or indirect fraud through identity theft and that sort of thing.
Okay, clear. Many thanks, Kieran Martin. There. Well, if you're worried that you might have been affected by this, here's the BBC for Business reporter Simon Browning with some advice.
Experts keep speaking to say it's important not to panic, but to be alert if you think you may
evicted. Watching for both emails, messages and phone calls. Hackers can sometimes use the details they have to trick victims into revealing more information. In some cases, scammers may try and exploit the fear caused by the hack as a way of trying to persuade you to share information. One cyber expert called them opportunistic scammers. These specialists official sounding messages about resetting passwords, receiving information, scanning devices, or missed deliveries. It's full of text speed designed to sound more convincing and being urged to act immediately or within a limited time frame.
Simon Brown. Now, voters in South Africa's election have punished the ruling ANC, the party once led by Nelson Mandela. Results are in from 99% of polling stations, and its share of the vote is down to 40%, its worst result since apartheid ended 30 years ago. This is a significant drop down from the 57% share it won in 2019, and it complicates the political picture, as it means the party must now go into coalition in order to stay in power. The BBC's Africa correspondent Barbara Natasha got the reaction some voters in Durban.
I think there's been a shattering. I think it's the beginning of change in South Africa. There's many discrepancies at the moment. Hopefully we'll get some of them sorted out. There's been quite a shattering between parties, which is good. And there's been some small parties who are going to get a leg on enough they can able to get one or two seats. And that's going to bring a voice to the government. So I think this is a start of change for good.
The country is not going to be stable. Once you get a coalition, government outcomes, there's a lot of demand. When there's a lot of demand, you must know there's going to be a lot of corruption.
The most important thing is that everyone has to consider South Africans first.
Apologies, those voters actually speaking from Johannesburg. Well, Paula Simpson is the Associate Professor of History at the University of Victoria and joins us now. Good evening. There is a lot going wrong in South Africa at the moment, unemployment flat out. How do you think that this uncertainty and the instability of a coalition government now, how do you think, what impact is that going to have?
Well, it's soon from the final announcement of the results tomorrow, in which there will be negotiations over a coalition. It's very difficult to see what the final outcome is going to be because it was a result which was unexpected by many, despite the fact that the polls had not predicted it. So we shall see. They've got a very small time to come to a solution, so we're not sure exactly what the result is going to be of those talks.
Where did it go wrong for the ANC, do you think? I mean, has this been a steady, slow decline, or is there something that's accelerated it in recent months and years?
It has been a steady, slow decline from 2004 when the party's vote share peaked at almost 70%. There's been a gradual erosion since then. Ironically, Jacob Zuma, who's the leader of the MK party, which has really undermined the ANC in this election, the vote share started falling under him from 2009. As you say, it was 57% in 2019, it was 62% in 2014, but now it's cratered to just over 40%, if it reaches that at all. One of the things that has fractured them is the breakaway parties, of which Controversy is the latest, but the fourth largest party, the Economic Freedom Fighters, they broke away just before the 2014 elections. So that fragmentation of ANC's unity has been a factor. Another one has been the 2008 Great Recession, from which the South African economy in some ways has never fully recovered because since then economic growth has fallen below population growth, and that has meant a gradual commiseration and impoverishment of the population.
What do you think are going to be the main demands of the smaller parties who are going to be trying to go into coalition? What do you think they'll be asking for in exchange for their support?
There are bigger, smaller parties, and there are smaller parties, for want of a better word. So those above 5% are the Economic Freedom Fighters, the Democratic Alliance, and
the attack. It's quite firm and it's quite cold. It's the squid that leads us. It's forming it in one of the think about a tire that is more sticky, it's got more energy, it's got high hold, long distance, and it has high grip. And that's the sort of tire essentially developing this tire is finding this trade-off between rolling distance and grip. So grip is essentially how much the tire sticks to the road, and then the tire is less squidgy, it's more firm, it's got lower rolling distance, relative fuel consumption, than it has
Jonathan, does a premium tyre that's going to cost more, does that score higher in that road resistance category compared to a credit tyre? So the main surface water resistance, wet grip, snow noise, so not that care about external noise. Testers like me, I test for around 15 aspects of the tyre, but budget manufacturers solely focus on road resistance. So you can have a cheap tyre that has the best road resistance on the market, but what you find is generally the tyre also balance out the road resistance and the performance very, very much. Yeah, that's something the tyre benefits potentially of getting a tyre that has better rolling resistance? Yes, we can. So gold is up around 10,000 miles a year. What other factors affect road resistance?
Family around, or lots of stuff, or you've got lots
While we're talking about grip, I got another email in from listener James who asks, is it better to have all-season tyres or a summer set and a winter set?
Winter tyres, they typically have thicker treads, so around 10 millimetres. They have more grooves, more sights, which are softer little slots in the tyre tread as well. Again, they're all trying to channel snow, ice, water out of the way, so the tyre will contact with the road. And then also you can have studs as well to grip into icy conditions. If you think of summer tyres, thinner tread, normally 7 to 8 millimetres. They'll have less grooves that water.
And are all seasons like the orange that is the perfect temperature between the two?
I mean, we don't have driving conditions. So, to be honest, if we had more snow in the UK, I would probably switch to have winter tyres. Cool environments, you definitely need one optimised for winter tyres and one optimised for summer tyres as well. It's kind of the reason why I don't have like fine shampoo and conditioner. I don't trust that they do, by doing them all together, I don't trust that they do each job very good.
Got a couple of episodes on that if you want to make a look. Jonathan, all-season tyres could be a good option for a UK winter. I think they're, for most people, a better the type of tyre that they need. So some manufacturers have gone for a specific tyre range. Other manufacturers have decided that actually modern EVs and modern internal combustion vehicles aren't that far apart overall. And what they're going to do is they're just going to make all their tyre range, or most of their tyre range, ready for EV applicable. So that means you don't need to be so harassed for an electric vehicle tyre. Almost every tyre now has some sort of EV mark on it.
environment, Gemma, there's something we haven't talked about today. The fact that tyres are a big source of pollution. As you drive, tyres shed tiny particles that then into the air, the water, the soil. That quickly adds up. One estimation that I saw said that around 300,000 tonnes of tyre rubber is released into the environment from cars and vans in the UK and the US every year. Now, I've seen so-called green eco tyres on the market, but these tyres looks like they're about lowering the rolling resistance, increasing the fuel efficiency, reducing the fuel consumption, or that they're designed to last longer. Two things that, will make them technically greener and more eco than alternatives, but are there materials, are there ways of manufacturing a tyre that sheds less particles?
Yes, I think when it comes from the greener angle, it's more of a manufacturing that they're using electricity to cut down the overall CO2 rather than the actual rubber itself. But just on your point in terms of tyre particles, there's actually a young startup company who is developing a device that you essentially stick to the back of your rear tyres that collects all of the tyre particles to stop it going in our water streams and everything else.
Good idea if that can work. Jonathan?
I don't think it would capture 100% of all tyre emissions, but I think it would make a very good impact into what is going into the environment. Tyre manufacturers are also looking at alternative ingredients in tyres, and it's also worth keeping in mind it's not just tyre A lasts for 50,000 miles and tyre B lasts for 60,000 miles. So tyre B puts more emissions into the environment. You've got to think about the compound's wear performance as well. So you could have two tyres with exactly the same total lifetime, so 30,000 miles. But a tyre manufacturer, premium tyre manufacturer, to make a really good long-lasting compound, might start with 6.5 millimetres as a new tyre and last that 30,000 miles. The budget tyre might be 9 millimetres compound once you get to that 30,000 miles bigger. So you're killing a lot more particles in the environment.
Before we get to the big final question for the experts, let me just ask about another type of tyre that is becoming more popular, potentially retreaded tyres. What are your thoughts on that, Jonathan?
There's two types of retreaded tyres. There's the tyres that are designed to be retreaded, and then more often not commercial tyres. So they have carcasses that are designed to have the tread lifted off and retreaded. So trucks, buses, driving applications, even at low speed, the extra weight that you get from the more expensive tyre can be hitting something or hitting someone or not, which can result in an accident or not. And also, the initial purchase price does not reflect the total cost of ownership, as we said, the label doesn't look at tread life. So if you're buying a budget tyre at £50 that lasts 10,000 miles, or a premium tyre at £100 that lasts 30,000 miles, your price per mile for the premium product is still going to be cheaper, even if the initial purchase cost is higher. So I think budget tyres are more often not a false economy, like a compromise with safety, the driving experience, and you might not need to save money. So I think premium tyres are SB.
Thank you both. After hearing all this, what do you think? Are you going to be spending more on tyres in the future?
I just think we'd like to set the minimum standard for the tyre which I was willing to fit. But Jonathan points out that money over the lifetime of the tyre don't need to take into account my observations that those tyres don't make it for life. So I might only get to help out that tyre, but it's going to have a puncture anyway within 6 months and be thrown away.
Do you feel then, on balance, that spending an extra £200 to £400 on a set of 4 tyres within the budget premium is worthwhile?
On balance, in my use case, where I'm not paying for the fuel my customers are, then no. But where I own the car and I don't want it to crash,
just about wrapped up today's Slice. A big thank you to Gemma and to Jonathan for joining me. Really appreciate it. If you are listening to this,
Occasional rain or drizzle, good, occasionally poor. Daily, southwesterly 4 to 6, battling westerly 5 to 7 later, occasionally gale 8 later in north. Occasional rain or drizzle, good, occasionally poor. Carrow, westerly, battling southwesterly 4 or 5, occasionally 6 later in northwest. Occasional rain or drizzle, good, occasionally poor. Faroes, southwest 4 to 6, battling west 5 to 7 later. Occasionally gale 8 later. Occasional rain or drizzle, good occasional cold. Finally, southeast Iceland, westerly or southwesterly, 5 to 7, occasionally gale later. Occasional rain or drizzle, good occasional hail. That's the shipping forecast. Now the general weather forecast is good.
Actually, well, high pressures with us this weekend, and that's why the weather has been dry for the vast majority of us today. And it's been quite warm over the rest of the best of the sunshine. Parts of Scotland and Birmingham, Western temperatures reach 21 degrees for Saturday, secondly, in the next hour or two. Again, been quite a pleasant kind of day. Now looking at the weather picture, overnight tonight, any cloud across England Wales will tend to fade away, and clear skies across all parts of the country. It's going to turn out to be quite a chilly night as well, with temperatures getting down to between 7 and 10 degrees Celsius in our towns and cities. The lowest temperatures for coldest spots, Scotland and Northern England, meanwhile, will have lows of as low as 5 degrees Celsius. So, it's going to be quite a chilly start to the day on Sunday, but the high pressure is still with us, and the amount of cloud is going to vary from place to place. Now, there will be quite a nice sunrise across Scotland and Northern Ireland. We have some pretty clouds coming in off the Atlantic, and rising sun might just light us up first thing in the morning, Sunday morning. After a right start then for Scotland and Northern Ireland, the clouds will tend to pick up as we go on through the afternoon, and can be late afternoon we'll start to see a bit of rain arriving higher on the islands as well. Otherwise, it should continue to be dry with some bright or sunny spells around. Temperatures generally reaching around 18 to 20 degrees Celsius here. England and Wales, meanwhile, there should be much more in the way of sunshine as we head through Sunday, and so it's a warmer day. Temperatures around 19 to 22 degrees widely, which will be warm.
Thanks, Chris. It's always warm on our desert island. Here's Lauren Levert.
My castaway is the actor Rebel Wilson. He's so shy as a child, and one took drastic measures in order to drama class. I start holding on to the car door, she pulls out of the car, and I hold on to the door, and then like a snowplow, into the door and says, fire, please have fire. And then eventually what happens is acting is really characters and cabinet knobs off on me somehow. Rebel Wilson, my castaway. Do join us to hear her Desert Island List. Tomorrow morning at 10.
Quite a lineup this evening on Radio 4. The award-winning actor, comedian and writer Stephen Merchant is talking about his latest project on Loose Ends at 6:15. While the acclaimed writer Zadie Smith will be on This Country Life an hour later, and there's a tribute to the comedian Rick Mail at 8 o'clock. That's all here on BBC Radio 4.
Good evening. A political era has ended in South Africa, with the ANC looking for coalition partners and could support collapse. Israel's Prime Minister is being urged to accept the latest deal for peace in Gaza, but he said he won't deviate from his goal of destroying Hamas. The owners of the global ticket agency Ticketmaster have confirmed that some of its data was accessed by hackers. In sport, the city of Troy has stormed to victory in the FA Cup. After dominating South African politics for 30 years, the African National Congress has lost its majority in Parliament. The party took power in 1994 at the end of the apartheid, led by Nelson Mandela. With all but a few votes counted for Wednesday's election, their vote share has dropped from almost 58% in 2019 to around 40%. The ANC's support was undermined in part by the emergence of the rival MK party, former President Jacob Zuma. Our Africa correspondent Barbara Kanga reports from the election results centre near Johannesburg, where coalition talks are beginning.
The verdict is almost in. You can hear the results ticking up. They're still not official, but they are clear. The ANC has done even worse than expected, punished by voters angry about economic mismanagement and corruption scandals. This is the most dramatic political...
Hamas will go for this week. The plan seems to give the opportunity for both Israel and Hamas to say that their demands have been met. But the pressure from the American president is not a guarantee that it is complete. We still haven't heard the reaction from Benjamin Netanyahu's far-right allies. They had previously threatened to
critical addition to the event of Benghazi that saw the end of the war before the destruction of Hamas. That would lead to the collapse of the current government. But one of Israel's most influential opposition politicians, Yair Lapid, has offered to back Mr. Netanyahu who supports the ceasefire deal. He says if right-wing members of the coalition do decide to protest, his party will step in the war. Rishi Sunak and the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer set out competing plans to increase prosperity across the UK if they win the election. The Prime Minister pledged that the Conservatives would transform 30 towns by giving them up to £20 million each. Sir Keir said he intended to reform employment support and benefits. Our political correspondent Jack Fenwick has the details. A message on the side of a bus and a pledge to level up parts of the country. Rishi Sunak's day of campaigning harked back to his predecessor Boris Johnson. 5 years ago, in the last election, reducing regional inequalities was a flagship Conservative policy. Today, the Prime Minister promised to expand current plans, with 30 towns receiving up to £20 million each. As he launched the official Conservative battle bus with the message "Clear Plan, Bold Action, Secure Future," the Prime Minister said that he would regenerate local areas. It would be local people in those areas who are in charge of how to spend that money to make sure it's spent and invested on their priorities. An example of that, levelling up everywhere, backing local people and their priorities, and giving them long-term funding assurance. To do so, Labour's Deputy Leader Angela Rayner said communities were feeling the impact of what's been 40 years of Tory decline. Alongside her party leader, Liz Rayner launched a campaign bus of their own, adorned with the more simple one-word message: change. Sir Keir Starmer said Labour's been wanting wealth creation. He set out a plan to get more people into work, with job centres and career advice services merged, and mayors given more powers to create local employment schemes.
For millions of people who aren't in work, who are on benefits, just to put the dignity of going back to work, we've been our plan on the table to reform the job centres so they can actually be places of support and back into work, and to making sure we've got a plan for economic inactivity.
The Liberal Democrats said the government's levelling up agenda had pitted councils against each other and left them begging for scraps. The party said today that it would mandate the Premier League to show 10 games a year on free-to-air television. George Galloway has launched the Workers' Party of Britain's national election campaign, saying he doesn't know which is the lesser of two evils, Rishi Sunak or Sir Keir Starmer. The party manifesto includes a promise to increase the personal tax threshold for the lowest paid, as well as to introduce a one-off wealth tax on all estates valued at more than £10 million. Speaking in Ashton-under-Lyne in Greater Manchester, Mr Galloway said his party was ready to play a decisive role in the campaign.
Our campaign all over this country, with hundreds of candidates, is well and truly underway. We thought we were pulling a surprise election. Well, it may have been a surprise to some, but not to us.
A 20-year-old man was appeared in court charged with murdering a woman who was fatally stabbed on the beach. Amy Gray was 33 times, following his son's serious scandal. Nassim Shah from South London was arrived in custody by magistrates in Poole and is due to appear in Winchester Crown Court on Tuesday. Ticketmaster customers are being warned to be extra vigilant for scam emails or texts. The company's owner confirmed that its database has been targeted by cyber criminals. A group of hackers claimed 2 days ago that they'd stolen the data of hundreds of millions of customers. This report from our business correspondent, Simon Brown. Ticketmaster is one of the biggest sellers of music, festival, theatre and concert tickets in the world. It now faces being the victim of what could be one of the biggest cyber attacks in history. The hackers, Shiny Hunters, claim to have the personal information and partial credit card details of 560 million customers. That number is still to be confirmed. Yesterday, Santander Bank admitted hackers were trying to sell 30 million of its customers confidential information. Experts say it's no coincidence that they come to life in quick succession, pointing to a cloud-based data security provider that both businesses use. Even if customers have protected their data with strong passwords, Lisa Forte, a cybersecurity expert, explained that they could still be targeted if a ransom demanded by the hackers wasn't paid by Ticketmaster.
Scammers and for today, are likely to be sending emails, sending text messages, pretending to be involved in some way, maybe pretending even to be Ticketmaster. So you've got to be very careful. If you receive an email or text message, do not click on any link, do not enter any details into anything.
One Nation said it was working to mitigate risk to its customers and that it was notifying users about the unauthorised access to their personal information. Nottinghamshire police have arrested 4 boys, including a 12-year-old, on suspicion of raping a teenage girl in Newark last week. Officers say their investigation is moving at pace. The boys, also including a 13-year-old and 2 14-year-olds, have been released on bail. 4 other teenagers were arrested earlier in the week.
Friends of Wembley this evening. Madrid are 14-time winners and start as the overwhelming favourites. At the French Open tennis, the world number 2, Arina Sabalenka, visits a round 4 after a straight sets win over her best friend, Paula Badoza. Women's 4th seed, Elena Rybakina, is also through. In the men's draw, Novak Djokovic plays later. Daniil Medvedev is through. Thailand's Winchenko Chai is the US Women's Open golf by 2 shots and 4 under par. And Great Britain's medal returns Polish hockey with a final over Ireland in London. As well as the United States Princeton.
John Wilkinson. NASA has abandoned the launch of the first crewed flight of the Boeing Starliner rocket just minutes before Glasgow. Technical concerns caused controllers to postpone the takeoff for 24 hours. Due to take 2 astronauts to the International Space Station, but the mission has been delayed for several years because of setbacks in the development of the spacecraft. Dr. Simeon Barber, a space scientist at Cambridge University, said safety was paramount.
In the first 2 minutes of that flight, when it finally goes, it'll be burning 2 tons of fuel every second. So that kind of tells you why everything has to be right before you hit that final go button. And there'll now be a kind of a controlled depressurization of the fuel system on the rocket, and they'll get the crew off, and then they'll try and go again tomorrow.
The headlines again. South Africa's ANC party is preparing for coalition talks after an election in which it lost its outright majority for the first time in 30 years. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is being urged to accept the latest deal to end the fighting in Gaza. Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer set out competing proposals to increase prosperity across the country if they win the election. Users of the global ticket agency Ticketmaster warned to beware of possible phishing attacks against data was hacked. Polls have closed India's general election. Minister Narendra Modi widely expected to win a 3rd time. BBC News.
Presented by Mark Wallace. That's the Pitch Broadcasting House tomorrow morning. Here's Henry.
Hello, this is Stephen of the White House News Deal at Glasgow tomorrow will be Ireland's demanding progress and clarity. And only seek to stand out moments of the election from the politics to reform the party leaders to lift and change the way Prime Ministers take office. Radio 4 celebrating the work of George Orwell. Our town through telephone. PH is always on sound and here on Radio 4 morning.
Thanks, Paddy. Back this evening, John Wilson's guest tells him that The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis was an early formative slide
or by an earthquake. But nothing like as dramatic as America, where the once and maybe future president
It's like having a full conversation in person. Yeah, never quite sure what button. Especially your parents are there, isn't it? There's an extra. They are in it. They did have like some dialogues with Rob, like yeah, so that's a difficult conversation with them.
So, obviously, the office made a statement in that. Do you take interest in the American version? No,
I definitely do.
Well, I mean, the Texerite, yes. But apart from the Texerite, it must be good.
I don't know why I'm not making myself go into one.
Yeah, well, you have to look for what maybe that's the next thing to do. So meanwhile, no, I'm delighted with what you've done with early years in the United States, California, Was that because you encouraged people to do it, or working out your own and then it doesn't?
Well, nobody encouraged me. That's what makes me happy. And then, well, in Paris, I saw these amazing I just want
Who's that?
so dances.
Vaguely or well familiar with the Cherry Orchard, but so as people know, it's an estate that's falling into bankruptcy, and the coming man, you play the coming man who's got the money, not from aristocratic stock, or aristocratic wealth, yeah,
and I suppose symbolic of maybe the start of so every other stage there's lots of things, you know, parking, something like the sort of low level carbon community, and they head over to ideas that Russia and China, and many of the borders over there.
It's only about 40 or 50 years since birth.
Exactly, right.
There's a lot going on. But there's a father son in the play first, and played in this particular, but she was. But she actually makes the point, I'm the only person doing any work here, because the owner of the estate, or having the parents, whatever, Harris, is a Harris, having been there, the cherry orchard is producing cherries. And but you're doing work.
politics, there's other writers at the time. They hadn't changed anything. One was like the working class, whereas Chekhov was
Yeah. What about the acting side of it? Because on a film set, I didn't know there was a great acting. So in the Donmar, you're pretty close up and personal to when you're sitting around. Sometimes you're actually put away.
that how we rehearsed, we were encouraged to act in front of audiences. So we transplanted books that we rehearsed and straight into the program. So we explore the idea of
and do you enjoy that?
I just feel like I wasn't expecting to feel like I was doing it before that I feel like I would be out of it, but this felt very
So in your career, you went to Cheltenham College and you were destined to be a lawyer. And at what point in that progress did you say no? I don't know if you went to your parents. Yeah, no, I'm not going to go become an actor.
my dad was where we lived. So whatever my dad does,
yes, yeah.
Opportunity came up to go to drama school.
Yeah.
I kind of ran away.
You say, well, you'll never get the promise of actor, 90% of actors out of work. And
yeah, he's right. Because a good part of my career was kind of out of work.
I mentioned before, was that a breakthrough? How I described it? Was it a role you were doing pretty well there?
No, I think that was the one that started to notice a little bit.
Where it was about terrorism, that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a remarkable thing you get to do. You look at it. Yeah.
And what was beautiful about Four Lines is that it was all set on a house. So there was somebody somewhere who was a great time in the car. We were concentrating to be able to see, having to be able to communicate with the play well enough for it to drop a bed. So it was actually the fact that that's just young actors. And you get a bunch of lads together.
And your face kind of fits with comedy, but also serious. Is this just me saying that you could?
Oh no!
Yeah.
I was wondering. Either way, it's probably work.
I thought to myself, when people would invite me for a kitchen supper, and you get them in Marianne kitchen, everyone's in a cocktail shop, and the staff, and the table goes, you're standing there in your jeans thinking, well, this is going to be a show inspired by yoga. That to me felt like a world that I could satellite, a world that I could go into and write about, and it's just funny. When they say to you in Oxfordshire, let's go down the pub, they mean Matthew Freud's pub that he turned into a Japanese restaurant, that's now an incredibly fancy sushi restaurant in Burford. And it felt to me as though the sort of tricky northern set, the Cotswolds had got out of control, the spending out of control, the wealth out of control, we're reaching the peak of capitalism. And when things get out of control and get absurd, and no one in it realises, I just think it's right to satire.
Do you think people might take people seriously and maybe personally, so they might see themselves as the characters? Or worried about that?
What's so funny is everyone thinks they're in the book, and I actually think everyone is in the book. And I had this one conversation with the best book furious about the book. Why is she so furious about the book? She said, because she thinks she's not in it. And then she said to me, why did you send her a book? Which I did. I did email back to her saying, thank you so much for the book. I'm so glad I'm not in it. I think that's a good idea. This is the interesting thing. There's a horrible sleazy cabinet minister in the book. Who is actually, he's not based on a politician.
Who is he based on?
He's based on every single entitled public schoolboy I have ever met. So it's more about his behaviour and his personality. It's not really about the job. But then I thought, well, when it's just sort of seems that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm taking a little bit of a stab at some people. Well, it's really interesting because obviously you look at it as a satire of those times, but the fact of what's happening now is actually quite pertinent with the election that's going on, and there is social function in everything. Yeah. With the crisis system, all the areas, goes down, a lot of people other people work for it. Well, it's actually not just about my people, but you want the lady out and trying to help people and the staff and you want that, otherwise it's very bad. You actually want that empathy. And the most important character in the book is Richard Butler, Ian Palmer, who actually is my Anglo-American Joe Butler. Obviously, I'm a American, I like that. And he provides social commentary, so he can look in at this world and go, I love my boss. I love getting my lessons on table. I love getting translation on the book. But it's good too. Yeah. Right, so avatar for the audience. And loving even though it's facilitating. Yeah. Like he's a wonderful character. I love the book mainly because it does have that kind of feel, a very kind of traditional. Yeah. People are one thing that has always been fantastic is the actual What is it you love about Countryside and well, I actually grew up in the countryside in farm, and I live in a farm in Gloucestershire, and I think you always want to go back to the roots, and Gloucestershire and the Cotswolds is just an incredible landscape. I think at the moment, terrible kind of geopolitical instability, it was quite nice to get local different land in the Cotswolds and different states.
More music now. The pleasure to welcome to loose end Lyra, the singer-songwriter from County Cork, who recently released a debut album, also called Lyra, went straight to the top of the Irish charts, displacing the young critical Beyonce in the process. It's taken you quite a while to bring out your first album. You've been creating waves since 2016.
Here I am, already fighting fjord.
But is this all part of a master plan?
No, to be quite honest with you, it's been a roller coaster. It's been up, it's been down. I've been with the wrong people at the wrong time. And now I'm finally with the right people at the right time. Got rid of the ex-boyfriend, wrote the album about him, and I was like, here I am. Everyone loves a sad song.
Well, there's an important role for ex-boyfriends, isn't there? Yeah. But your music is being used on lots of TV shows, Love Island, Grey's Anatomy, Striking Out in Ireland, The X Factor, Anyways, Essex.
I know, I've been on them all.
How did you manage to get your music on all of these
I
things?
think they just obviously hear the Irish accent. They're like, sure, we'll give her a go, we'll give her a word. At one point, I was like, they're trying to get me into Love Island. It was played like 3 times on one show, and I was like, I couldn't go on that. I love my food too much, and they don't bother eating that show. And they live like, somebody makes a slice of toast, and they're like, are you boyfriend and girlfriend now? I'm like, it would take a full fry. It would take a full fry to be boyfriend and girlfriend. So I'm just really honoured that they use Grey's Anatomy to push people. I very much
Now, you're famous for your fabulous outfits. Is that something you enjoy?
I love it, sure. I have actually, believe it or not, I've toned it down today. You know, I have the Leopard Tuesday.
Yeah, well, it is only radio, so we can see you, but most of the audience is just imagining you.
While they're driving but I love fashion. I love it to death, and I also do a lot of my stuff. I stuck my finger to my mum's glass table, putting diamantes onto outfits before. I mean, it is a bit of a health hazard because I was on stage once and all the diamonds started flinging off, and I was on. Everyone's like, eyes were taken out. I was like, please don't sue me. I have absolutely no money. I'm in the music industry.
Okay. What are you to perform today? Hopefully without diamonds flying in our eyes.
My main performance was I've been in a bad relationship. I've been in a lot of relationships, and I went to LA and I decided, you know what, girl, let your big fake hair extensions down. Go wild, go hell for leather. I wrote the song about like just living for myself. This is it.
No, you've got an accompanying musical too. Do you want to tell us who they are? Yeah. Take it away, Lyra. And you make the point he's spending a fortune.
He's spending a fortune. He just buys loads of drones. It's like, you know, something out of Robot Wars. Yeah. Maybe.
So, read your book, discover what you've done, but then it's inherently a call to arms for all of us to make sure we don't pave over our the obsessive buttons with regard to
Exactly, it's called One Garden Against the World, but actually, you know, the RHS estimates there's 30 million gardens in the UK, so if everyone in the UK got together and considered the world up,
right.
Absolutely amazing.
And Cotswold is one huge garden.
Well, indeed.
Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us today, Kate Bradbury. Kate Bradbury's talking about plant management at the Cheltenham Science Festival on the 9th of June. One garden next week. And that's the news I'm tied up this week. Just down there, you just would have heard again. This week, you're listening to different society. You're listening to Transgenic John Raymond. So thank you for listening to Kate Bradbury, Stephen Metz, Lara, Madeline Peru, Judith Bailey, and One Sykes. Today's producer was Olive Clancy, the production coordinator is Lydia DePage Miller, and the studio manager is Duncan Hannah and Dale Ford. Next week, Stuart McKennie's guest will include Catherine Moran and Texas Midnight Runners.
Hey, there's Clive Anderson. I do remember the TV drama Boys and Blackstock, but then it was dominated by the desperate and highly menacing character of Russell Hughes, that catchphrase. That's a news from right there from the production of Boys and Blackstock in the National Theatre with the profile of his last episode. First off, was it insults me? Hello, you know, because I was connected to the world. Really, these topics celebrating that, but it is still clinging on to a open spot in population 2006. Well done, everyone there. Nonetheless, there are still a few things to work on. You know, you see it in the world through what public flavors today in the stores. We have it out of our company and resulting in excellent national great analysts on the news. That's Friday night, 6:30 o'clock. BBC Sounds and Jake Report.
News at 7 o'clock. After 30 years in power, South Africa ANC party continues to form a coalition defeating its outright majority. Almost all the votes now counted in Wednesday's election, the ANC stands at about 40%, well down in the last election. Democratic Alliance and South Africa can move out in the President Dr. Hunter is a journalist and says the ANC needs to
Creation that they're going to have to make is what are they negotiating? What are they able to concede on? And I suppose opposition parties will be doing the same, because it's not only a national government that has to be negotiating, it's also two provincial governments that is going to have to be a coalition government to produce how an entire term.
The owner of the ticketing website Ticketmaster, Ryan Nation, has confirmed it's been hacked. Cybercrime group Shiny Hunters claims to have stolen the data of more than 500 million of the website's users. That figure has not been confirmed. 4 boys, aged 12 to 14, have been arrested by police investigating the rape of a teenage girl in County Town. 4 have been dispensed with bail conditions. 4 other boys have been conditional bail. The body of a British car crash in Switzerland has been found. The body of Ben Orton, with more than 55,000 followers for his thrill-seeking social media post, was recovered from Lake Nigeria. NASA has abandoned the launch of the first crewed flight of the Boeing Skyliner rocket military on Wednesday. Concerns caused controls to postpone the flight for 24 hours after the space launch, with 2 astronauts to the International Space Station. In the Champions League final between Borussia Dortmund and Madrid, the Salzburg Wembley last time. Dortmund has won once before, Real Madrid a record 50.
Zadie Smith has established herself as one of the world's most successful and popular living novelists. In 50 Minutes, she talks to John Wilson about her upbringing and early influences. That's in This Culture. First on Radio 4, time for Profile.
Kiss it, love. Come on, kiss it. Kiss it, love, come on. I can do that. You don't have to walk, Smith. I can walk, Smith.
notes about someone, don't you? I could do that. Well, hello everyone and welcome to Profile. Today's subject is one of Liverpool's favourite sons, the writer Alan Bleasdale, creator of Boys from the Black Stuff, much more. I'd like to apologise for my poor attempt at a Scouse accent. It's worse than Martin Freeman's in The Responder. Quite thanks, Martin, if you're listening. Bleasdale's one of Britain's most admired dramatists. Here are Robert Lindsay, playwright James Graham, and first, Sir Michael Palin.
We've got the presence around now. It's worthy too. Incredible charisma. Complicated, passionate, loyal, compassionate, eccentric, funny, sad, hypochondriac, moaner. If you put all the DNA into one person you've ever met, you might come up with an animal.
Decided what to meet in this Chinese restaurant right on the nose. He was laughing immediately, and we sat down and he said this thing which was essentially, he may have suspected I was quite nervous about meeting him, and he just said to me, put his hand on my hand and said, do you know how good you are?
I mentioned the current BBC Sunday night hit The Responder, and the man who writes that show, Tony Schumacher, said he couldn't have done it without the example of Alan Bleasdale.
I mean, to have points to cut the road for me, you know that program was last night, Boys from the Black Stuff? The guy who wrote it used to live in my house, you know, as a kid. To find out that somebody was in that industry, from where I live and grown up watching you're surely exposed to my head.
Boys from the Black Stuff was a drama on BBC Two in the autumn of 1982. More than any other programme of its time, it was seen as capturing the experience of working class life in the north of England during high unemployment and Mrs. Thatcher's government.
I want to be a working man again. I want to come home at night with dirt on the hands and not have to hide it from anybody. If you would just listen to me for a minute, Ken, you don't want to take me on like fire. If I took you on, what would happen the weeks there was no work when the winter comes again?
Over 40 years later, the drama's being revived at the National Theatre in London in a new adaptation by the playwright James Graham, who's written plays in Evelyn Downing Street in 1979. He persuaded producers to turn the play into a 5-part series. The Boys from the Black Stuff was green-lit.
So I'm giving you shine somehow? After what you did? Look.
I've already
Look again. No bread. The breakfast.
The cast included Julie Walters and the late Bernard Hill. He played Yossef Hughes, a man struggling with his mental health and to stop his children from being taken into care. Tony Schumacher says the series reflected life in the city at the time.
The 70s and 80s in Liverpool, it was taken around for it, my family people, my dad was still going along with it. So I think that television reflects society.
Black Stuff had a huge reaction, says Peter Ansorge.
Exactly of Russell Stewart and the real feedback was an outfit normally never been for us. They all sang out Russell's
Old track. Many years before the ITV series Mr. Bates versus the Post Office about the Horizon IT scandal, Boys from the Black Stuff showed what impact a TV drama could have. As Bleasdale hammered out his script, he had a special way of making it bespoke for his actors, says Robert Lindsay.
He's very loyal to his actors. And Alan, as you probably know, writes with the picture of actor on the photo. So the actor acting in his mind all the time.
Bleasdale was often on location as his dramas were made, despite concerns he had over his health, being away from home.
The first time we were in a bar in Manchester and we were having a discussion about heart attacks. So Alan and I mean, a complete hypochondriac very long time. And Alan said to me, apparently he heard that if you're about to have a heart attack, you can smell smoke. I don't know where he got that from, but he and I were then waiting for a cab. We'd had a couple of drinks. And as we were waiting for the cab, Alan suddenly said,
Nelson, a headmaster and the conscience of the kids. He says there was a lot of Bleasdale characters in his play.
And at the phobia, we had to see a pictures particularly, crying and all sorts of things. I mean, that was part of the richness of his character. We couldn't go over the Duncorn Bridge. The whole scene now going over the bridge. I sit in my car, sort of staring at the bridge and shaking. So that was Alan. Couldn't give Nelson. And all of them. He was sort of back.
Provoked a big reaction. Derek Patton himself, says Michael Taylor.
Alan said, yes, you're not a hero, or something like that.
With the reworking of Boys from the Black Stuff at the National Theatre, Alan Bleasdale's work has been introduced to a new generation. The original TV series is back on iPlayer. It's a reminder of what people in Bleasdale's hometown have never forgotten. Here's James Graham.
That feels a good Alan Bleasdale, was a bit like it. Or good cameras. I decided they were
His commitment to whatever is right for him is absolutely compelling, and that's really one of the great strengths of him. I think this man who really cares what he's right for.
Give me your hand, Storm. 10 years after Mick Miles' death, I'd like to share with you some never-before heard audio of the great man in action. And like a knife, sharp but gritty. I'm Max Kinney. Whilst working for him on his unreliable autobiography, we recorded our conversations as we created a whole new comic character. On the air at some of the highlights, along with input from Rick's family and friends, including Ben Alford, and Caleb Levy. What sets them apart is Rick Miles and global phenomenon, tonight at 8 on Music Sounds and Radio 4.
First on Radio 4, some fascinating insights as John Wilson meets a renowned novelist, essayist, and playwright.
Welcome to This Culture Life, a series in which leading creative figures reveal their most significant influences and experiences that inspired their own work. I'm John Wilson, and my guest in this episode is the novelist, essayist, and playwright Zadie Smith. Having grown up in northwest London, winning a place at Cambridge University, she found herself at the centre of a publisher's bidding war when she reached 21. Her debut novel, White Sea, became a huge critical and commercial hit on publication. 2000, and it was more completely orange drives for women's fiction. Since then, with books including On Duty, NW, Swingtime, Zadie Smith has established herself as one of Britain's most successful living novelists, renowned for her witty dialogue and explorations of cultural identity, class, and class. Her most recent book, Fraud, is her first historical novel. Zadie Smith, welcome to This Culture Life. You were born, grew up in Willesden, in northwest London. Take me back to the family home in childhood.
Well, actually, I was born on the same street. My dad's job was holding the kind of direct mail you get through your door. That was his job to design.
And there was a character in that.
Yeah,
That's
that,
young
yeah.
house, isn't it? So, it's Archie, isn't it? So did your father recognise you?
He read about 30 pages of it and then he was like, that's enough. That was his reaction.
about in retrospect. My father wasn't really a reader anyway. My mother is. My father's aspirations thought stuff, but he didn't do it very often.
And you said that the first
Yeah.
probably impacted on marriage.
Yeah, I mean now it doesn't seem strange. I guess people have children older and older, but in that community at that time, he wasn't talking when his parents were young, really young. My mom was almost happy, and my dad was 50. That really formed the way I was. First of all, it connected me with the past in a way that was unnatural, and then also about death. Yeah. It was really, when he looked old, he was old. I don't think it's a negative thing.
What about his culture?
There's a kind of ethical influence in the Second World War that's kind of foundational to me. I guess both my parents have given me the idea of the worst that is possible. So on the one hand, chattel slavery, on the other hand, politics. So I had these two kind of ideas in my mind of how bad it could be. So that was maybe the largest influence. And then, unfortunately, my dad, it was a lot of old movies, old music. He loved jazz. I love jazz. He had had two lives, he got born in 1925, so he went through 40s and 50s culture, that was him as a young man, and then in the 70s he gave it another shot. He tried again. New wife, new music.
He sounds extraordinary.
He doesn't seem extraordinary at all, he seems completely dull, but in retrospect, he does seem quite extraordinary.
Your books are often very funny, very comic passages. Yeah. Was he a funny man?
He loved comedy. Everyone in my family loves comedy to the extent that my brother became a comedian. He had a good sense of humour. He was funny exactly, but he watched all the comedies and he really liked comedy that was close to making you cry. Yeah, really, and that's what the English specialise in. They're really good at it.
And what about your mother? What about her culture? You say that she was a big reader. So she led you to what books?
She just bought an enormous amount of second-hand books and a lot of African American literature, which I don't know if I would come across otherwise, certainly not in the schools, and a lot of feminist literature. She was trying to educate herself growing up, becoming a social worker. She was reading a lot of pretty hardcore feminist texts coming out of Berkeley and coming out of America and France and Africa, and just all interesting. Yeah, that was maybe her main interest on me, kind of a broader perspective, like not so personal, not so English.
There's a lot of that's large that was mother is a character in novel Swing Time. Mother is one of the two films.
I actually think that my mother said it is more like me than it is. And it is like she's wilder and she's fun and she's not a control freak, and I'm all those things, but my mother was not those things at all actually. She's a much more expansive character than I talk to Dan Silverhand, everybody knows my mother, and talk to my mother, and they wouldn't talk to me in the same way.
On this cultural life status spin, I asked the guests to choose the most significant creative influences and experiences that inspired their own work. And your first choice is reading The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe as a child. So why have you chosen this book?
I think Charles Dickens' influences are the strongest on the right. You are obviously as an adult, but you're formed by these things in childhood. And I know that I'm a writer of ethics in some sense, like I'm interested in what people do and how they do it and the effect of that. I don't even think that is the best way to write a novel, but I know I was made that way, partly because of the stuff I read as a child. And The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, of course, is a kind of supplement to history textbook and anything else. But what amazed me about it was the idea of these children making decisions, making choices, and really feeling the consequences. And I still think that book is extraordinary, and its effect on me was extraordinary. Like, I really believed it. I was one of those kids opening Wardrobe just in case. Check.
It's a book about danger and power as well, and betrayal.
Absolutely. And there's a moment where she comes out and tells me the story and no one believes her. It's also philosophical as well about what reality is, what it actually consists of. And then she goes back in and Edmund goes in, bumps into her, comes out,
And as a kid, when you read it, you think, oh, here is the moment where she will be vindicated, and the truth will out, and justice will be served. And Edmund does this incredibly snake-like, servile, pathetic thing of lying in that moment. And I remember being so horrified. Like, it's the first realization that, oh, people don't always behave as you wish them to behave, or have their own agendas, or in fact, power, even though this has been offered this thing by the white witch. That's a very interesting, like, political and personal lesson for any child. I remember being really horrified by it.
How old were you?
I first read that book when I was 7 or 8.
And how did you come across it? Was it a school book? Was it one that you
That would have been one of the many that my mother either purchased or got out of the library. You know, we had a small flat with drowning books, and even now my mum lives in a nicer flat at Wilson. We still can't move the books. It's practically bring down the house, so that's always been a way.
Did you read the other novels?
I read everything in my book. I think the library, the reason I'm so addicted to libraries and believe in them so much is because of their kind of the shadowy borders around the taxonomy. Like, people are always saying, you need to get whatever book you like online, but of course you don't know what you don't know. And the library is a kind of physical place where you stumble upon things. So I would, in my memory, I would just read alphabetically. And you're learning violin, clarinet, piano, anything you want to learn was provided. So, you know, sometimes I feel like the ancient mariner walking around England saying, did you know? You used to be able to. So for me, it was an incredible experience. I loved my school. I don't know what private school is like, but my school was, you know, incredibly mixed, incredibly vibrant, really interesting, and full of opportunity.
How many people came?
In my secondary school, about, I think maybe four. In my year was particularly good. 4 went up to the maybe 2 went to 10.
That's not bad in a city.
Yeah, in 2,000 kids. But of course, when you get there and you talk to kids from the other part of England, they tell you that 1/3 of their schools is set up at the university right now. So, you know, I lived in a bubble where I thought the way I lived was the way everyone else lived. And when I got out, I saw how many determined to make tax for us as narrow as possible and as wide as possible elsewhere. You know, that was a big learning.
Being on the swing track, there were 2 young school friends, protagonists, who were obsessed by classic dance routines, tap dancing in particular. So that was one of your motivations.
Yeah, I love to dance. I still love to dance. It's like one of the things that gives me just joy. I guess if it's not cerebral, it's just pleasure. And I'm good at it. I'm a good dancer. I like to dance.
Do you mean some club dancing?
Any kind of dance.
It's interesting thing about how two girls sit there and watch classic music. They study from staring at the
Another part of that England which has disappeared, where Channel 4 at that time, early 80s, came over to school with this endless stream of amazing Hollywood pictures from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. So you watch all kinds of things. You could watch Neighbours, of course, if you're feeling like you want to watch Neighbours. I did that all the time too, but there was this kind of open university theory about the strategies that should be able to access these cultural things. My interest in this course that I think came from my father, I think he was my father was funny then, was to tell me things like going to see Casablanca or hearing Ella Fitzgerald sing in Cairo, these kind of things. It seemed to me like extraordinary.
Well, he saw her live.
Yeah, he saw her live. So that kind of stuff would blow my mind. So watching those old movies, you know, in those days it's such hard to construct now, but watching this was a very small part, but part of this incredible way to be forced to be somewhere and it's spread out all over the world. I'm so delighted to have whatever connection I have with the African diaspora. That's part of the meaning of my life and the beauty of my life. Other people's racial thinking is very, very boring and sometimes deeply aggressive, but I have something to do with my brothers, and my brothers suffer much less of it than darker skinned
boys of the same generation. You know, there are so many versions.
You grew up in a part of London which has an NW postcode in book. Even your latest novel, The Fraud, which is 19th century historical novel, is partly set in the fields of rural children. So your neighbourhood has been a source of inspiration. It's almost a recurring character.
It is. I never planned it that way. There's probably a sociological explanation, like when I think of my brothers and their music and their rappers. This is evident in hip-hop music. When you don't have a lot, the streets become the thing you think you own, and you think about it as if they're your streets, and they have that role in your life. And I think that must be part of it. But I also think it's to do with the neighbourhood itself. It just happens to be, I just happen to be very fortunate to be born in this square mile, which contains the entire history of my country in miniature. It has the whole of, rapid industrialization, immigration, density. Whatever you want to know about England, you can find in that zone. And to me, that is one of the amazing things about England, the historical history. You can travel all the time, your mind and your thinking. That's always the case.
Your next choice, then, is a very personal one. The poet Nick Laird, your husband. When you met at university, how did you?
Well, it was a sort of funny story. It was everything seemed to be there very easy. It was Oxford and Cambridge, a short story, poetry competition. Put the story forward, and then the editor liked it when it was the first time I was published in the world. And I asked my dad to come up in 2008 to the book club for the book. And we went to the party, and Nick was there, and Nick Lord Myers came up to us and said, in a kind of Lord Myers way, he doesn't ask you to hold his hand, meaning to shake my hand. And my father said, well, you'll have to ask me for that first. What a strange joke, but that's the first time I ever met him. And then we were friends for years, we definitely been together for a very long time. So I always thought that was a foreshadowing, I always put it in the novel.
But how aware of his poetry?
From the beginning, right from the beginning, and in different ways, he felt very much outside in that scene, and he was the only kid from his school to go to Cambridge, and the first one in, I think, in a decade. And also he was Northern Irish, so he put up with a lot of, tough abuse. Like, it's unbelievable the kind of things people would say to him in Cambridge. So we were kind of joined by that, I think, by like a deep interest in words, and also awareness that we were not, let's say, in our natural milieu.
How much was his poetry part of the attraction?
I always advise young people not to fall in love or date for the reasons of genius or talent. It seems to me one of the dumbest reasons you could ever get together with anyone. And yet, he is a very great poet, but I think for me, the more important thing was that it's in some ways easier and more practical to be with someone who doesn't mind that you're always thinking about writing. So we're both always thinking about writing, and we write together a lot. A lot of the way he writes is extremely, inspiring to me in that it's much more open and distinctive, and he's not so much a control freak, and the way poets use language is so interesting, it's such an intensification. So he stopped me being so sloppy, I think, as a writer, and thinking more about what language actually does.
Is he your first reader of every
and
draft?
And vice versa, but I mean, he doesn't take my views seriously on poetry, which is fair. But
his poetry has appeared in some of your work, particularly in On Beauty, where there are sections of verse which are attributed to a poet called Claire, but actually are
that's Nick. Well, because sometimes I have a long time thinking about an idea, and I have all these theories, and then I read a poem of Nick's, and I'm like, oh, well, that's the same thing, but just said in a much briefer way. And I guess that's what poetry does, it's just an intensification, but sometimes I have used it.
Tell me about the line, time is having this thing.
Well, I mean, this line, which on the internet, I believe, is attributed as my most famous line, is unfortunately not written by me. It's Nick's line.
It's from a poem called The Last Saturday in Ulster.
And to me, it's a very profound idea, and as I've got older, it becomes more and more true. That time is the most precious thing you have, and to spend it on people and with people is really an expression of love. I mean, it's just that simple. And Nick is particularly good at understanding what's important. Time with people is what people really want.
time, attention, and care. Whereas my time is always divided into how much writing can I do in this hour, how much reading. And if I hadn't met Nick, I would have done that my whole life, and it would have been a shame.
It's a beautiful line. How did you feel about you borrowing it, giving it to one of your characters?
Extremely annoying. Once we were out in Brooklyn and some girl said it was tattooed on her arm and said to me, look, at your line. I was like, oh my God, no, that is not my line. Stop tattooing yourself, guys. Wow.
How does it work at home? Do you have separate writing rooms?
For some reason, we've always got together where we used to just write at the end of the semester together, but when we moved into the house in Wilson, we got like a shed at the end of the garden. And I'm in the house, which seemed perfectly reasonable until we had kids, and I was like, I'm in the house with kids, and you out in the garden. But the truth is, I really don't, it's irrelevant to me where I write, so that's the thing. And for a poet, it matters, like he wants to see things and be in the world. I could write anywhere.
I suppose he's in the garden, isn't he?
Yeah,
he's got nature around.
Yeah, he's got nature, that stuff matters to him. I am a Philistine, I don't care about, I love, one day to I'm not anti-nature, but I don't need to see anything, or be around anything beautiful or anything, and like, I just need some brown noise in my ears and be left alone.
You said earlier that you hadn't thought about writing seriously as a kid. When did it actually start? Given that you got a publishing deal when you were 19 years old.
I remember writing, I basically wrote half of the novel when I was about 15, and the main character was called Gianni, about that novel, and then my memory, the first serious writing was the story each year, and I got it. And then I started writing. Yeah, and then I started writing.
Without listening to this, walk and find item your head and rather on the road children with first and last names on the right collision course, names that secrete within them mass exodus, cramped boats, planes, cold arrival, medical check. It is only this late in the day, and possibly only in Wilson, that you can find best friends Sita and Sharon constantly mistaken for each other, because Sita is white, her mother liked the name, and Sharon is Pakistani, her mother liked the name. That deal was occupied and why the broken line.
Yes.
Superation. So did you target, did you send it?
No, I didn't. I don't think about anything. I literally, I just didn't have every name, the living writer. I didn't know him, but there was a kid in college, still a very good friend of mine, his mother, Lisa Freeman, very much in the literary world, she was a writer herself, and I went to dinner there, and she was the one and when she heard that, she was like, this is like, you should get an agent. You can't just sell a book without an agent. She is the one to get Wiley, and so that's how that was. But I hadn't been with Wiley for 4 years. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. That was incredible. It's a good example of what working class kids don't have. Apart from lack of access and money, you don't have connections. It's the network. That's exactly what. And even when I got into university, I didn't think I would have got in unless there was a middle class parent at my school who had been and did fake interviews with me. They told me, how you talk, don't just ask a question and stop talking, try and have a conversation. Why would I have known those things anyway? It's like kind of cultural capital that can be passed down. You can help kids in these kind of schools by giving them interview questions, but it's not formalised in this country. You have to be lucky. I was lucky.
It was a huge amount of money, wasn't it? A lot more.
Yeah.
250 grand.
It wasn't, it was less than that, but it wasn't very large.
Was it a surprise?
Surprise doesn't really cover it. My father had never made more than 30 grand a year. It was like, it was an insane situation. So my parents couldn't really comprehend it. Like my dad did keep on sending me 20 quid a month, even after I got my deal. I was like, Dad, I think the emergency is over. Like, you can stop doing that now.
So we wrote about that, and that was criticised that article. Another more recent one about the language used to discuss Gaza conflict in particular. you're not on social media, so how aware are you of those criticisms that are playing out?
You always have lovely friends who know you because they explain to you how awful things are going on life. Look, one of the things you might be able to model for young people, if nothing else, is the sense that it won't kill you. It's okay. It's okay. You know, I believe in freedom. These people are absolutely free to say whatever they want to say about it. The essays as they exist will exist in their long form. They won't be paraphrased on the radio or anywhere else. All you have to do is go and read them. You disagree with them. That's absolutely your right. Of course. That is part of free discourse. And I think the worst thing to happen is that people write things and get engaged in specific reaction and then become increasingly right-wing and reactionary and so none of that is going to happen to me. I'm going to remain a socialist and someone who is against dehumanization of humans. That's it. So I'm not going to drift further to the right. I'm not going to get manically depressed or feel persecuted. It's fine. People are free to say whatever they want. That is also possible. I'm asking them if they're interested. What would it be like for your brain not to be on this 24/7? Let's just try it. Maybe you'll think differently. It's not about your strongest about politics. No one's trying to move you out of your but how you express them, how you deal with other people, how you consider other people, that might be important.
How different are you as a writer versus that later on? You've got a publishing deal at 19 and won all the awards and all the accolades for the book.
I mean, I think I'm still very childish. I think the job keeps you in a childish position. You don't have colleagues, you don't have the daily adult life. You're just doing the same thing for decades, just going to the library, writing, going home and staying writing. So I'm self-conscious about it. You know, I'm self-conscious about having arrested development in some way. That worries me a lot. But the difference is, I think I've got a little bit of confidence. Like I don't think anymore, I don't know what I'm doing. I thought I don't know what I'm doing for most things. But recently I thought, no, I don't know many things. Like most things I don't know. But I do know something about language and about the way people use it and what it can be used for. And so I feel more confident about that. And when I'm writing now, I feel like I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm writing. I mean, that's the bit I mean about childhood. To me, it seems like I just started. I can't believe it. Sometimes I look in the mirror, I look at the evidence, and yeah, I'm almost 50. Like I'm not a kid anymore. But I feel like I have so many things to write, so many novels in my mind, and so I'll just keep going. People are my subject, and they don't stop being interested.
Thank you so much for sharing your culture with us. This Cultural Life is presented by John Wilson. The producer is Edwina Pittman. It's a BBC Studios audio production for Radio 4. After the news, Rick Mail. You've never heard him before.
We have an ongoing serious incident over.
On BBC iPlayer, listening to Belfast, but Mad?
Yeah, but Mad.
We're placing an area that could explode at any minute, and we're flying completely blind.
I don't need anyone to protect me when my enemies are harmed. I'm not saying it's going to be easy and open thing, but you know, blue lights.
You can't see on this person. Watch me.
Watch on BBC iPlayer.
BBC News at 8 o'clock. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa is under pressure after the EU's ruling African National Congress Party to its worst election results in 30 years. The ANC, which won around 40% of the vote, will now be forced to form a coalition government. Voters have been unhappy with high levels of corruption, unemployment and crime in the country. 4 boys, including a 12-year-old, have been arrested on suspicion of raping a teenage girl in Europe last weekend. Nottinghamshire police say their investigation is continuing at pace.
Right. I think it's made the list.
Time is upon us, ladies and gentlemen. The man is in the building. We are in the presence of the Rick Mail. Yes, we are very special people.
That's Rick Mail, one of the greatest comic performers of all time.
We're all in the presence. That's only different pubs because they told me that we want to go to the toe.
A prodigiously talented comedian, writer and actor, Max Kinnings. I'm a writer, and in 2004 I wrote a book with Rick called Bigger Than Hitler, Better Than Christ. This was meant to be Rick's autobiography, but was, in reality, anything but.
In this electrifying autobiography, Rick stands naked in front of his vast legion of barons and disciples and invites them to take communion with the blood that he has spilled for them during his 30-year war on show business.
The book will be Rick's life as told by the Rick Mayall, and the is significant. The Rick was a whole new addition to Rick's comic characters, a raging egomaniac with a violent self-belief in his own talent and relevance.
Hello. I'm not going to say hello to all of you, but at least that's 4 of you. It's magnificent to be here and just for you to look at me.
In order to write The Rick's dangerously absurd memoir, we started recording our conversations, and this is what you're listening to now. 2 people with a book deadline and an idea for a character, trying to make each other laugh.
What's the man with the 2-foot cock after breakfast? Well, this morning I had a boiled egg.
Rick called this verbal sparring jamming, and I've got over 100 hours of recordings of us jamming together, and some of it we're going to play for you now.
So now I can see that it's working.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, he's living. That little thing, so we're now recording. And when he's not recording, and when he's not recording.
After Rick died 10 years ago, all the audio of our time jamming together for the book and other projects remained on my computer hard drive. I didn't know what to do with it. But a couple of years ago, I came to realise that the archive is an intriguing insight into the life and creative process of a unique performer and an extraordinary human being, one that I was lucky enough to call a friend.
The 3 greatest contributions from Jesus to Manchester in the world, that is, Manchester football, players William Shakespeare, and Rick Mayall.
Over the next hour, we'll celebrate Rick Mayall, the comedy icon, on and off stage. We'll hear from family and friends.
Come here, I'll give you credit. Go and get my fags from that table.
Just sit there ordering children around.
So I was always Barbie and he was always a king. That's what we called each other. Both no guy came up with those.
Frankly.
As well as the man himself, as we dip into my recordings of Rick and I working together. And being Rick, there'll be violence. And maybe some bad language. As we explore a side of Rick Mayall you haven't heard. We'll meet Rick the performer, Rick the subversive, and Rick the collaborator, as well as the Rick I knew. This is the story of my friendship, Rick Mayall, and global phenomenon.
Either loved or truly liked by as wide a group.
This is Trevor Dolman, who in 2004 was a senior publisher at HarperCollins, specialising in autobiographies, and a man from whom I was going to keep a very good secret.
I had a phone call that I liked, and that strides up to the table. Am I not famous? Yeah, Rick. He said, I walked in twice. There's 5 or 6 photographers out there. None of them took any photographs. What is the matter with this? Pulled me through the restaurant, drops down to his knees, puts his hand to one side, and starts to pretend he's giving me a blowjob. Of course, the paparazzi were absolutely wild. They're clicking away like this. Rick then gets up, turns to me and says, there! Good enough for you? And walks back.
But you can say it on Radio 4, if you Rick Mayall. At the time, I was a novelist with a sitcom idea which Rick had loved. I was already a little starstruck to be working with my comedy hero when he told me he'd agreed to write an autobiography. You write books, he said. Why don't you write it with me?
You need that interaction, you need that other sensitive
control is broken.
This is actor, comedian, and friend of Rick's, Alan Lederer, who has recently gone through the process of writing the book, which also started with getting ideas down to a voice recorder.
Right, it was a great device to make me remember the jewels, the mistakes, the disasters, but also the bits that might have gone a bit better than others.
There was only one problem. The Rick, his newly forged, swearing comic creation, would be the most unreliable of unreliable narrators.
It's pomposity, isn't it? So he's kind of embracing pomposity as his field of humour.
I used to do this thing in Dartmouth, comedy festival. Rick would never want to do it. Never really be Rick.
This is Peter Richardson, actor, writer, director, and founder of the comic strip, a legendary comedy club in Soho turned era-defining television series and movie franchise.
He always wanted to be this other person. So for him to write about himself became quite problematic.
That's why he created a character to write his book.
Yeah.
Crazy, self-grandizing, maniac.
It's because he certainly was. He preferred to be this figure, personality that people saw him and enjoy that. He's actually quite unassuming kind of person he really is. You look like you must have found.
You know, what's the, and obviously his autobiography was largely fiction.
I hope not. He called me a genius.
Right, so once again, greatest book ever written by the greatest man that ever lived. Then by you're a wanker.
Working with Rick was a dream come true.
Sit down. Point it out. Sit down, that's what we do. Excellent. You're out.
2 years later, Rick had learned not to stand up to the classics. Yeah.
He and I were obviously like brothers.
His stand-up, novelistic, sitcom-writing behemoth, and at the time, nervous thrasher, Ben Up.
Obviously, walking out of the virgin, obviously the oldest. So I'm sat there, I'm 18 years old, and this immensely handsome, beautiful man. I remember the first words I heard him say is, "Hi." I'm with you. As if he'd been saying, you know, I'm Elvis. See, that's how we say I'm Elvis. His comic arrogance, you know, part of his huge self-obsession as well. His comic so brilliantly and distinctly placed. 1979, that was the big year of our century. That's when they began to create that run. Simple, but that's what it is. And that's where we came. Bam! We just done a fantastic show in Edinburgh called Death on the Toilet. Got everything in it. Violence and lavish jokes. Death on the Toilet, their life-changing show. They really discovered just how good they were, and that they knew that as a double act they could absolutely kill, and audiences adored them.
What set him apart was his bravery, complete ease with himself, physically,
Helen Lederer.
physicality, just putting his hands out and going, what? Probably breaking a lot of records of what is manageable before it becomes annoying.
My name is Rick, okay? And I'm from Rick.
Peter Richardson recalls seeing early Rick performances.
He was a force and a community on stage. He had an immediate impact with his encouragement.
As you know, we're a group of feminist poets.
Getting really heated about it, so people started laughing at him. He started to change to shut up. And thought, this is going to really work. So he went to the comedy store and did the same thing. And the more he tells people to shut up, stop laughing, the more they do.
It's all a bit wacky here, isn't it? We're all a bit mad. We were up till midnight last night. Eating biscuits, anything we're paying for, isn't it?
The character they cover it. The audience realising they're in the presence of something completely indifferent and create that entirely on his own. But I think that's why he then later on said, well, I think he's great. And it wasn't just perfect. Which was for the comedy store. Gone, shit, gone, and then the person actually really.
I never got popular.
There you go, a bit more self-aggrandized.
But I think Rick likes to tell himself that way.
No, sure.
I'll let him have that one. It was great hearing his voice then. Yeah, back in the world as well.
So anyway, the actual in reality what happened was he said it's important. He's got enough one night a week. So he went over to a mucking strip club called Fort Wayne. A few bars in Fort Wayne. So your film please was on a great show. That was called Comic Strip. Magical Comic Strip.
A week before the concert, Rick and Abe turned up in his purple suit with this amazing act, David Buck. It was fantastic. So that was when suddenly Rick and Abe actually formed.
That's not Johnny Craddock, that's a Volvo! That's the same colour? It's blue! We must be thinking of different Johnny Craddocks.
Sure enough, the first thing Rick does, wakes up. Is the one who does what it was. And she said, well, I was hoping to get what I expected.
Brain trauma is usually a rich comedic scene. And even though the better than Christ in the book title was Rick's gag on how he'd been dead longer than Jesus, he remained unsure as to how he would tackle it. As it turned out, it's the one section which is perhaps the most honest in terms of Rick's desire to tell the true story of what happened and how he managed to survive relatively unscathed. Here's Rick talking about an early stage of his recovery when he thought he had been imprisoned in hospital and needed to break out.
I was down on the downstairs, had to run out to my jobs. And I had a taxi. And there's my Ecuador, and there's a very good friend of my friend Jeff, looking out for kids. I said, Jeff, I've broken out, it's fantastic. Let's get pissed. And I was able to speak a bit that night. So I communicated. He said, you turn up for a piece. And sure enough, about 10 minutes later, my normal daughter, Australia, turned up. She says, Ben, you have no idea how much I'm in bed. Where's your bed? Let me give you a bit of introduction. Relax. Give me the text. I wake up and I'm in the hospital. In another hotel. They call it prisoner, isn't it? That's why they can't make up here. People were repeatedly convincing me at that time, you are ill. And that's when I started to realise that I was. And that's when I started to confess that, wow, I've had a serious head injury.
The accident left Rick with epilepsy, which he controlled with medication. He also suffered from a little short-term memory loss, which made the learning of lines sometimes tricky.
After his accident, I developed a perhaps he wasn't. I mean, of course, he was extremely injured, and it took a long time to recover from it. But he was as funny as ever, and he was getting better. Never, ever whined or blamed. He was never mawkish. He was never self-pitying in any sense.
By the late 90s, Rick and Abe's sitcom Bottom had become an enormous success as a live touring show. But Rick didn't want to rush straight back to physically intensive live work.
That's excellent. That's the show going well. I don't think I'm sure. Let's do it instead. Good. Yes, yes. So then I said, well, I don't want to stop working.
Following the final Bottom tour in 2003, Rick appeared in comic strip films, radio and television dramas, and also made a welcome return to sitcoms, appearing in Marks and Brown's Believe Nothing, and as Greg Davis's father in Channel 4's Man Down, much to the delight of fans, such as Sanjeev Kohli.
I've always liked Greg Davis, and I can't help thinking that it's because he physically resembles Rick Mail. You know what I mean? It felt like a good fit for him at that age. And it was enjoyable to see, like, some extra Rick Mail like this.
Oh yeah, and there was also that autobiography he said he'd write.
Possible spelling error.
Finally, the book was finished. The collected correspondence and showbiz anecdotes, complete with spelling and grammatical mistakes, were all just as Rick wanted them. Surely now we should come clean. fess up to our publisher Trevor and tell him that Rick and I had taken this considerable cash advance for an autobiography and written something entirely different. We came in for a meeting and he specifically got into the wardrobe for it. He was like, okay, I want to look like a pro.
This was the Rick was coming in.
The Rick was coming in. He got his Doc Martens on.
I remember that.
He's got his denim jacket on.
Yeah.
He had a bit of a buzz cut, so
I can see him there.
And he came in looking like a yob.
Look, yeah, but just don't touch. Don't play with me. I'm dangerous. Don't call my name. I might just answer. I don't mess around. I'm dangerous. I'm like a knife. Sharp but pretty.
And he decided that he was going to stand on your coffee table. You had a low coffee table. But he's just kind of ranting at you and pointing at you going, Trevor, it's not what you think.
Yeah. Yeah. I do remember thinking to myself, God, I've got a desk thing here. You know, he was on full for Rick mode. I'm fascinated to hear that he dressed up for them. That's good. That's detail. In one of those great concrete cars. Yep. Yeah. And then blame the coat.
It's scary. It's quite a needy phase.
Heather Lederer has recently written her autobiography and remembers this point in the process.
They're very different to writing it, so there's a big departure. So I'm now kind of facing the judgment and second-guessing criticism.
Rick Mail is here. Rick, say hello to your fans. Hello, ordinary people out there. Hello, legions. This is the Rick. Stop laughing at me. This isn't the laughing at Rick. They are laughing. We just established that I am the Rick. Yeah, the Rick. I am the, not the Rick.
With Trevor now fully on board, we embarked on a book tour with the character of the Rick delighting crowds and baffling radio hosts across the country.
I've always played characters anyway in stand-up, haven't you? And they are characters. That's right. I've always the autobiography, bigger than Hitler, by the Rick Mail. Buy it. He's out now, price $18.99. Rick Mail, that's an unusual interview.
Even the wonderful Steve Wright there, shying away from using the full title of the book. So, you're probably wondering, during the year we spent writing the book, did our publisher Trevor Dolby suspect anything? Did he really think Rick Mail was going to turn in a genuine autobiography?
That wasn't my first rodeo. I knew exactly what was going on in the background. I'm sure you and I spoke during the period. You were talking about the sorts of tone, the sorts of things you were talking about. So it wasn't entirely a surprise. But I'm
There we go. Throughout this story, I implied that Trevor didn't know anything about what we were writing, when the truth is, of course he did. But throughout that period, I was still nervous about what he would make of it. So, like Rick's philosophy for the book, my story about Trevor is not exactly the truth, but it's a version.
All of these things, I just feel safe watching them do stuff.
Ben Elton records the day of the funeral.
Those of us left went back up to the grave as the sun was setting. He was buried on this hill overlooking the Bill Atherton. And, you know, it was beautiful. The sun was actually setting on the king as when I fell. And we all sat around, and Barbara sort of sat on it, and we were, you know, let's get together and smoke bags. It felt very natural. It felt like it was there. And it was.
Also, what was hilarious at the funeral was the song when he was getting taken up to Pepper up to what's that song called? William Tell. Sure, maybe. Yeah, and he'd said that he wanted that like not that long.
It was like 2 weeks before he died, so he's like, I've just seen this song and I want this family to carry my body.
Yeah, it's like hilarious.
It's not a great song, but it's kind of in time.
And it was a lot, they were all just sweating and having to this stupid song. It's like forced out that type of pronunciation was so funny. So dumb.
Rick appealed to the rebel in all of us. That's one of the many reasons he was so loved. He tapped into a universal desire to be a bit naughty. He tested social conventions. often wrongly and clumsily, deliberately so, but always with the exuberant, childlike glee that's in all of us, if we only know where to look.
And walked with me, for I shall be your God.
He was somebody I desperately wanted to work with, to be with, to hang out with. It was definitely a love. I mean, I loved him. But it was no less passionate than that. I kind of had a kind of comedy crush on him, which was pretty clear.
It's all very well.
Yes, ha ha ha.
Yes.
It's all very well laughing.
Ha ha ha, or possibly
Adopted, communicating, energized. I think there's something fair about what he's doing.
Tracing of an eye. Lost myself. Not tracing of my eye. Let me land over there.
Comedy genius, I think. He's a great matchmaker.
I don't want this to end, Matt. No, those of us who are privileged enough to be both friend and fan, and that's what I was. We were truly close friends, and I was a truly massive fan. And of course, I'll never forget him.
John,
Yeah.
I just want to say a couple of things about the project. The Dark Ages actually were not very dark. They were just like okay, let's turn this off.
Macbale Pan-Global Phenomenon was written and presented by Matt Skinnings, produced by Gareth Quinn, and was a Mighty Fun production.
Orwell versus Kafka on Radio 4 and BBC Sound.
George Orwell and Franz Kafka. So influential, their names became adjectives. Orwellian, I take it to mean obsessive, dystopian.
Kafkaesque has a sort of more surreal and darkly humorous component. I'm Helen Lewis.
And I'm Ian Disney.
And we're looking at how and why both writers remain relevant and still resonate with us today.
There's probably nowhere that you can go where you couldn't possibly be Orwell covered.
Part of a special weekend program.
Orwell versus Kafka starts on Radio 4 and BBC 10 next Saturday morning at 10.
BBC News at 9 o'clock. South Africa's ANC party is preparing for coalition talks after an election in which it lost its outright majority for the first time in 30 years. The party has around 40% of the vote, with counting almost complete. It was undermined in part by the rival MK party, led by the former president Jacob Zuma. Jamie Mighty, a South African political commentator, said the outcome was in some ways a shock.
What was not expected was the scale of basically the drop of the ANC in this election. The projections are looking at it's going to be close to 40, but not quite 40, which is a 17% drop from the last election. So the scale of drop is something that was so inconceivable in terms of conceptually for many people.
Thousands of Israelis have been holding a rally in Tel Aviv demanding the acceptance of a ceasefire deal outlined by President Biden yesterday. Israel's opposition leader, Yair Lapid, has urged the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, to accept the proposal that involves the release of the Israeli hostages held by Hamas. Rishi Sunak and the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, have set out competing plans to increase prosperity across the UK if they win the election. Prime Minister claims that the Conservatives would transform 30 towns by giving them up to £28 grants. Here, they're intended to reform employment support and benefits. A lawyer for Donald Trump has told the BBC that nothing will change in the former president's run for the White House despite his criminal convictions. He was sentenced in July for falsifying business records. Alina Haber said that even if he was jailed, he would stay in the presidential race. 4 boys, including a 12-year-old, have been arrested on suspicion of raping a teenage girl in New York last weekend. Nottinghamshire police say their investigation is continuing on the case. The launch of Boeing's Starliner spacecraft has been delayed again. The first crewed test flight was postponed moments before blastoff because of technical difficulties. BBC News.
A Hollywood legend Tots Taco slated this evening. That's the food programme at 10:30. Now on BBC Radio 4, we're taking ourselves to the top of the world and remembering a deadly avalanche a decade ago. This is the Everest Obsession.
And at the top of the cliff, suddenly, all over the country, the Everest just appears over the top of this tiny pond. And that's the first time we've actually
the goddess mountain, the home of goddess mother of earth.
Everybody's heard of Everest, but yet it's also achievable by everyday people.
10 years ago this month, 16 Sherpas died when an avalanche swept away everything in its path. The disaster, one of the worst in Everest history, struck as Sherpas were carried loads of equipment through the notorious Kudu Ice Fall, top camps higher on the mountain.
Good morning, breaking news. Tragedy at the top of the world. An avalanche on Mount Everest base camp has killed local guides.
That it is the biggest number of human deaths on a single day in the history of Mount Everest.
The hundreds of climbers with ambition to scale Everest are dependent on shrines and prayer flags, interspersed with outdoor equipment stores and bookshops displaying second-hand mountaineering books. From here, those headed for Everest fly to a small airstrip out into the mountainside of Lukla and walk 40 miles through some of the most breathtaking mountain scenery in the world to base camp.
Base camp turns into like a neutral ground. Everybody with the same goal. So there is big community, really good friendship, lots of teams in preparation, to go up. I love it there.
Lakpa Rita Sherpa is an international mountain guide and has led many Sherpa teams.
Carrying supply with oxygen, gas, fuel, everything not broken.
The Kudu Ice Fall looms ominously above the base camp, massive with jumble of glacial ice. I recall fitful months lying awake, listening to it creaking and groaning, constant reminder that it's on the move, slowly but inexorably slowing down. It's inevitable that vast blocks of ice will topple. Cavernous crevasses below. The only question is when. Through this icefall, Sherpas fix ropes and ladders to carry loads onto the mountain multiple times, and for the climbers to make their way to the first camp, and from there, higher onto the mountain.
Start to climb to the top. We go to camp 2, sleep. Go to camp 3, 7,000 meters, sleep. Start early in the morning, put oxygen bodies at 7,500, climb to South Pole, 8,000. You have to be there around midday, like there is 1 method. And we start climbing to the summit the same day, around 8 p.m. Just when you said the importance of many of these things, this is the relation that you make with your fellow climbers, with the Sherpas you work with, the people you work with. On the 85 Sherpa, there is trail flags there. And that's how I use it going at the top of Everest. Reaching the summit, it meant more to me than I'd ever expected. And I feel it has been. I remember I was in tears when I was on the top, and I just couldn't help thinking of all the great experience it was when we went up that mountain on the previous expedition in 2022. It was a mixed feeling, but it was also profoundly satisfying, just stand there and look out onto Earth.
For Lakpa Rita Sherpa, it was more than a personal achievement. Scaling Everest meant her years at work to support his family.
I was so proud of myself. It was so emotional, and that was a very, very special day for me because that end of my career, and so I was pushed up by other climbers. It was a unique experience and unexpected
mental health with our injections, etc. It was visible that he had an altitude sickness. He started to undress himself. There were two people on his team, and they said, no, you're okay with everything, you just keep going. But that picture stays in my head. We started to walk down, and I tripped, and I started to roll fast down. But I was obviously up to the rope. Luckily, I probably was rolling, I don't know, 50 or whatever, 70 meters, and the rope stopped me on my anchor. And then we hit, of course, base camp. Celebrate and be so happy and so overwhelmed, and we realized that, well, yes, I did stand on the top of Everest.
And then the really fun part was walking on the glacier and down into the frozen valleys, into thick air. The sweet smell of vegetation and colours of life hit you like tidal wave. Just for that, it's worth adventuring higher. When I reached the summit of Everest in 1993, I wasn't alone. And that's true for most. Climbers have been relying on in one form or another since the 1950s, when early explorers recognized their strength and natural ability to high altitude. The majority of Sherpas in London are from an ethnic group of the same name, but it was from other backgrounds. Here's Lappa Rita Sherpa, who has climbed to the top of Everest 17 times.
A lot of people have confused with Sherpa. People who are very all think that Sherpa means climbers or they are photos. Sherpa is an ethnicity. He is Sherpa immigrant from Tibet about 700 years ago. Our language, our traditions, our cultures are very similar from Tibet. Early 60s when the Swiss and British climbers come from Everest, they use our tribal people to help them carry those seven mountains.
When Sherpa Tenzin Norgay made the first successful ascent to Everest with Edmund Hillary in 1953, it became a household name. And the opening up of the mountain since has meant the Sherpa community has been forever changed.
Tenzin Norgay or Edmund Hillary used to be forest, but since then, because of telling stories, I always want to follow their footsteps. After climbing Everest, radio in the mountain played a song, and so our Christian house climbed the mountain. The song was playing in all the times of the day. So my dad used to be a mountain guide. First hike, we lost his tools and gear. So being an older son, I had to take over and even carrying waters from them, opening bottles, water bottles, and opening the wrapper of snacks, candy bars and stuff like that, opening them and putting them in their mouth. Not many people know that. Even the climbers, so we goes there, sometimes for their very sad thing. All of this helps to the summit of Everest because of us. We are that time of those climbers.
Just over 20 years after my summit, on the 18th of April 2014, the spring Everest climbing season was about to get started. At base camp in Nepal, there was a buzz around with climbing, film crews, even stuntmen, all hoping to reach the top. And Sherpas were already establishing higher camps in the mountains, paving the way for the climb. The first obstacle for an Everest descent from the south is passing through a massive ice field. Caroline Ogle was organising base camp operations for an expedition.
It's a jumble of blocks of ice that is just seemingly impassable.
Lappa Rita Sherpa was running the biggest expedition she's been in charge of as a new Sherpa mountain guide.
Go to the Boras Bowl, maybe sometimes climbers who come there, or Western guides who are guiding their team, they go there 1 or 2 times to the Boras Bowl.
Caroline Ogle was organising base camp operations for an expedition group.
Early in the morning, most people were still in their tents. The sun was getting
Harry Mansion, worked as a cook that summer, a safer option than being a climbing Sherpa, which involves ascending and descending the ice multiple times. She last spoke to me the night before the avalanche.
We always thought if you go as a climbing Sherpa, anything can happen. So don't go as a climbing Sherpa. Go as a cook which is relatively safe. Our daughter was just 3 years old when we talked to our son and daughter, and at last he talked with me, and he said, "You don't have to worry. Take good care of kids and send them to school."
Like the researcher, it sent his team through the ice before dawn. They were carrying food and fuel.
My tour guide come to my tent and said there's a huge avalanche right over there. There's a lot of service being built for the
Almost immediately, it was really clear that something major happened. Heard the rumble of the avalanche. This one just felt different. Almost immediately, the radios crackled into life, and there was just lots of Sherpa talk. We can hear Sherpas shouting across base camp, talking on the radio. So, that immediate feeling was, something big was happening.
Margaret Waterbury, on an expedition to climb neighbouring mountain Lhotse, should have been going through the icefall that morning. I asked Chris if he would have wanted to climb Everest when he was younger, if it had been as popular as it is now.
Thank goodness. I climbed it and was climbing on it at an earlier stage, but that was much more agreeable.
Hello, Daddy. Great to hear you. Did you make it, Dad? Wonderful, Dad. Congratulations to every single one of them.
I think today, I think another factor here is that as far as young climbers go, want to go in fellowship, all the A-class meetings go, and most of the same pattern. If you want exploration, if you want to do something, please have a note that we get people to go for these 5,000 and 6,000 meters. And there's still hundreds of those in the Himalaya. And so I think, if a person wants to find adventure, they can do it. And good young climbers are doing exactly that now. Probably only what they've got permission, and they just kind of got in, done it, and now that will eventually.
For me, I fell under Everest down, as many do. The want to climb is from within. I was ridiculously fortunate that on the upper reaches there is Angasan, Kanichari, and Nepal, stars in the expanse of the Himalayas. The view is so vast and within it, so small, which, far from being pollution, is liberating. In a moment that captures one by surprise and overwhelms, it offers at once a new perspective and connection, a oneness with everything you can see and more. Whatever the danger, the obsession remains. Everest today is more accessible, far more luxurious, but still dangerous. 17 people died in space last year. For Sherpas, change started with economic prosperity for themselves and for their families. But now it's about finding their voice, speaking with authorities so that climbers who flock to the mountain from around the world listen. But Everest's power is above all this change.
For me, it's purely this love of the mountain, purely. Reaching the top is like proverbial icing on the cake. It's just, a bonus. I mean, it's, as I'm going to say, it's going to the heights. It's ethereal. It is what fills our imagination. And I think that's what it's all about.
That was The Everest Obsession, presented by Rebecca Stevens. It was produced by Laura Jones and Craig Boardman. After the news in 15 minutes, the BBC's entertainment reporter Colin Patterson will be recounting the history of celebrity restaurants as we meet one Hollywood star who's now trading in tacos. Let's have a look at the weather. Tomorrow, southern England and Wales with some dry conditions, patches of cloud and plenty of sunshine. Northern England will start the day with dry and bright, but clouds will build in through the afternoon. Scotland, Northern Ireland with some cloudy skies and spots of drizzle. On Monday, central and southern Scotland with some spells of sunshine. Elsewhere, it looks cloudy with a chance of some patchy rain. This is BBC Radio 4.
BBC News at 10 o'clock. This is John Hammond. Good evening. After 30 years in power in South Africa, the ANC has lost support and lost its majority. Right-wing members of Israel's coalition government have said they'll pull out if Benjamin Netanyahu accepts the latest peace proposals for Gaza. Boeing's hopes of sending astronauts into space have suffered another last-minute setback. In sport, Real Madrid have won the Champions League final at Wembley. After dominating South African politics for 30 years, the African National Congress has lost its majority in Parliament. The party took power in 1994 at the end of apartheid, when it was led by Nelson Mandela. With but a few votes counted in Wednesday's election, their vote share has dropped from almost 58% in 2019 to around 40%. The ANC's support was undermined in part by the emergence of the rival MK party, led by the former president Jacob Zuma. Africa correspondent Barbara Plett-Usher reports from the Election Results Centre near Johannesburg, where coalition talks are beginning.
The verdict is almost in. You can hear the results ticking up. They're still not official, but they are clear. The ANC has done even worse than expected, punished by voters angry about economic mismanagement and corruption scandals. This is the most dramatic political shift since the end of apartheid. The chair of the Electoral Commission, Mosotho Moepia, says it needs to be managed well.
We ask for all the electoral stakeholders to please remain calm. The leaders lead this nation at this time, and for voices of reason to continue to prevail. This is a moment that we need to manage and manage well.
The ANC is still the biggest party, but it's lost its majority. Its leadership has begun internal consultations to prepare for complex coalition talks. There are no easy fits. The leader of the left-wing economic freedom fighters, Julius Malema, said he wanted to work with the ANC, but he sounded like a fighter.
We are able to achieve our mission in our lifetime, and that mission was to bring the ANC to defense. That's what we've always told you, that this animal is going to be defeated by
South Africans face weeks of turbulent coalition talks. They voted for change, but don't know yet what it will be.
Two key figures on the far right of Israel's coalition government have threatened to pull out of power sharing if the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, accepts a new peace deal for Gaza. The proposals, which were put forward by President Biden, start with a 6-week break in fighting and withdrawal of Israeli troops. They also include a permanent end to the war. Steve Jackson reports.
The proposals announced by Joe Biden have been backed by the Israeli opposition and opposing countries. Hamas has even said it will agree to the deal if the Israelis do. But the two leading right-wingers propping up Mr. Netanyahu's government have now expressed their opposition. The National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, said any deal that resulted in a ceasefire before Hamas was destroyed would be a victory for terrorism. The Finance Minister, Bezalel Smotrich, said he opposed any truce measures unless Hamas was wiped out. Both have threatened to pull out and collapse the government of Mr. Netanyahu's signs, a significant obstacle. However, one of Israel's most influential opposition politicians, Yair Lapid, has offered to back the Prime Minister as he supports the deal. He says if the right-wing parties pull out of the coalition, his party will step in to fill the void.
Rishi Sunak and Labour leader Keir Starmer have set out competing plans to increase prosperity across the UK ahead of the election. The Prime Minister pledged that the Conservatives would transform 13 towns by giving them funding of up to £20 million each, Keir said he intended to reform employment support and benefits. Our political correspondent Jack Benwin has the details.
A message on the side of the bus and a pledge to level up parts of the country. Rishi Sunak's day of campaigning harked back to his predecessor Boris Johnson. 5 years ago, in the last election, reducing regional inequalities was a flagship Conservative policy. Today, the Prime Minister promised to expand current plans, with 30 towns receiving up to £20 million each. As he launched the official Conservative battle bus with the message "Clear Plan, Bold Action, Secure Future," the Prime Minister said the money would regenerate local areas. It will be local people in all those areas who are in charge of how to spend that money, to make sure it's spent and invested in their priorities. An example of us levelling up everywhere, backing local people and their priorities, and giving them the long-term funding assurance to do so. Labour's deputy leader Angela Rayner said communities were feeling the impact of what she called 14 years of Tory decline. Alongside her party leader, Ms Rayner launched a campaign bus of her own, adorned with the more simple one-word message, change. Sir Keir Starmer said Labour's #1 mission would be wealth creation. He set out a plan to get more people into work, with job centres and career advice services merged, and mayors given more powers to create local employment schemes.
For millions of people who aren't in work, who are on benefits, desperately want the dignity and respect of being back to work, we're putting our plan on the table to reform the job centres so they can actually be places of support and back into work, and to making sure we've got a plan for economic inactivity.
The Liberal Democrats said the government's levelling up agenda had pitted councils against each other and left them begging for scraps. The party said today they would mandate the Premier League to show 10 games a year on free-to-air television.
George Galloway has launched the Workers' Party of Britain's national election campaign, saying he doesn't know which is the lesser of two evils, Rishi Sunak or Sir Keir Starmer. The manifesto includes a promise to increase the personal tax threshold for the lowest paid, as well as to introduce a one-off wealth tax on all estates valued at more than £10 million. Mr Galloway said hundreds of candidates across the UK were ready. Ticketmaster customers are being warned to be extra vigilant for scam emails or texts after the company's owner confirmed that its database had been targeted by cyber criminals. A group of hackers claimed 2 days ago that they'd stolen the data of hundreds of millions of customers. This report from our business correspondent, Simon Brown. Ticketmaster is one of the biggest sellers of music, festival, theatre and concert tickets in the world. It now faces being the victim of what could be one of the biggest cyber attacks in history. The hackers, shiny hunters, claim to have the personal information and partial credit card details of 560 million customers. That number is still to be confirmed. Yesterday, Santander Bank admitted hackers were trying to sell 30 million of its customers confidential information. Experts say it's no coincidence the attacks have come to light in quick succession, pointing to a cloud-based data security provider that both businesses use. Even if customers have protected their data with strong passwords, Lisa Forte, a cybersecurity expert, explained that they could still be targeted if the ransom demanded by the hackers wasn't paid by Ticketmaster.
Scammers and fraudsters are likely to be sending emails, sending text messages, pretending to be involved in some way, maybe pretending to be Ticketmaster. So you've got to be very careful. If you receive an email or text message, do not click on any links, do not enter any details into anything.
Live Nation said it was working to mitigate risk to its customers and that it was notifying users of having unauthorised access to their personal information.
4 boys, including a 12-year-old, have been arrested on suspicion of raping a teenage girl in Newark last weekend. Nottinghamshire Police say their investigation is continuing at pace. Simon Jones reports.
Police say they received a report that a teenage girl had been raped on Plainfield last Saturday evening. A 12-year-old boy, along with a 13-year-old and 2 14-year-olds, have been arrested on suspicion of rape. They have been released on bail with strict conditions. 4 other teenage boys were arrested earlier this week and also bailed. Specially trained officers are supporting the girl and her family. Police say they are doing everything they can to establish exactly what happened and extra patrols in the area will continue.
A 20-year-old man has appeared in court charged with murdering a woman who was fatally stabbed on a beach in Bournemouth a week ago. Amy Gray, who was 34, died at the scene. Another woman suffered serious stab wounds. Nassim Saad from South London was remanded in custody by magistrates in Poole due to appear at Winchester Crown Court on Tuesday. Polls have closed in India's general election, ending the seventh and final phase of voting. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is widely expected to win a third term in office. Our South Asia correspondent Samira Hussain reports from New Delhi.
It took 6 weeks to accommodate the almost 970 million eligible voters in India's general election. The Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, came into this election with his popularity at a high, many analysts expecting a clear majority for his Bharatiya Janata Party, or BJP. But his main rival, Rahul Gandhi, the leader of the Indian National Congress, and his coalition of opposition parties gathered significant momentum through the course of the lengthy election campaign. For many voters, unemployment and inflation were the most pressing issues. Exit polls in India are now suggesting it will be a BJP-led coalition government, although these surveys are not always reliable. The results of India's general election will be released on the 4th of June.
One of Donald Trump's lawyers has told the BBC that he was the victim of a political prosecution and that nothing will stop him running from the White House. The former president has been found guilty of all 34 charges he faced, falsifying business records, and is due to be sentenced in July. Alina Habba said he would appeal because the American people needed him. In an interview for Sunday with Laura Kuenssberg, which will be broadcast on BBC One tomorrow morning, Ms. Habba said voters were afraid and were saying, "We cannot have this happen to us."
We have seen